Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening. We have two meetings tonight, but normally we would do county first, but tonight we're going to do the select board meeting first and county second. So I will call the July 22nd select board meeting to order. I don't believe we have any changes to the agenda, so we'll accept it as written. Oh. That better? Okay. And I will turn it over for announcements to Erica Mooney.
Thank you. The select board meeting is being audio and video recorded, and I am going to announce the applications that we have received for round 2 of the 2026 committee vacancies. This is pursuant to your committee appointment process. Board of Health, we have 1 seat available, 2 applicants, Richard Ray and Amy Beaton. Cannabis Advisory Committee, we have 1 seat available and 0 applicants. Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, we have 1 seat available and 2 applicants, Jeff Clayton and Mary Longacre. Council for Human Services, 1 seat available and 1 applicant, Sarah Wright. Council on Aging, 2 seats available, 1 applicant, Amanda Wright. Cultural Council, 2 seats available, 2 applicants, Bianca Brown and Mary Longacre. The Finance Committee, 1 seat available, 3 applicants, Benjamin Reppert, Howard Matz, and Kip Murphy. The Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust, 1 seat available, 2 applicants, Forrest Bell and Raymond DaCosta. Scholarship Committee for the Town of Nantucket, 2 seats available and 1 applicant, Lori Elliott. The Sign Advisory Council, 1 seat available and 1 applicant, Ben Normand. And Zoning Board of Appeals, 1 seat available and 1 applicant, Thomas Garrett. You are scheduled to make your appointments at your next meeting, which is August 5th. The applicants will have an opportunity to speak on behalf of their applications, introduce themselves, and then you will go immediately to a vote. The third announcement, no select board meeting on Wednesday, July 29th due to our summer schedule, with the next meeting being Wednesday, August 5th. And then committee appointment, select board comments.
Select board announcements and comments. I do have one. I just wanted to let everyone know that the Community Preservation Committee will hold their annual summer forum at their regular meeting on August 18th at 10 a.m. in this room. And that's always a really nice meeting where every category is represented by someone who's received funds in the past, and talk about the process and so forth. Anybody else? Okay. We do have an update on public comments from prior select board meetings. I will read that now. I think this was from June 24th. Lucy Hare inquired whether the question previously asked by Luke Thornwell regarding whether paragraph 3.5 of the RFP is missing. This was the RFP for the procurement for the African Meeting House vandalism investigation. The town's response, this question was addressed by Select Board Member Moore at the Select Board comment section of the Select Board June 24th meeting, excuse me. So this was this at the last meeting?
At the last meeting, but
two meetings ago. In addition, the Select Board addressed the same question at multiple meetings, including November 12th, 2025 and December 17th, 2025. I would direct you to the Select Board's page on the town website for any and all responses to public comments. Megan Perry and Joan Stockman both requested the Select Board issue a stop work order and eviction notice to Surfside Crossing. The town's response is this matter is part of pending litigation and we cannot comment on it at this time. And again, any prior public comments are on the select board's page with more extensive answers in some cases. Next up, we have public comment for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion this evening. I do have to limit everyone to three minutes. And I will take comments now. I have one online and one, I'll start with the person coming to the mic, Penny Dye.
Thank you very much. Penny Dye. Um, we need some help in terms of registrations for the short-term vacation rentals for 2027. Many of our homeowners have been told they cannot do 2027 leases unless they have a certificate of registration, yet the registration is not open on the website. So if we're expecting people to comply with this for 27, we need to make it easier for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Greeter online.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bill Greeter, president of the Nantucket Conservation Association. This week we had over 88 property owners from Warren's Landing to Smith Point gathered at our annual meeting. And the top concern during the Q&A session was this season's severe mosquito infestation. This issue dates back to 2014 when a citizen's petition article sponsored by two Nantucket residents was submitted to establish a mosquito control project with a $100,000 annual budget. Despite opposition from the then Finance Committee and Select Board, town meeting voters overwhelmingly approved the measure, creating the Mosquito Control Commission. Until recently, the regular spraying of all still waters has been highly effective. In fact, the only time the project failed was once when the town attributed the contractor failing to perform the required treatment. Now residents are facing a very similar breakdown, raising urgent questions. What happened to this successful, well-established process? Was the treatment applied this year, and if not, why? This year's occurrence cannot just be attributed to recent weather conditions. There's more to the story. According to correspondence from the town shared by an attendee, the town's process has changed. The original right of entry forms are obsolete, and evidently the town manages mosquito surveillance and control directly through a professional municipal contract, which I believe is Vector Disease Control International, for defined areas across the island. Because this infestation represents a serious public health issue rather than a mere nuisance, the designated agency or contractor must take swift action to correct this very, very important issue. We look forward to the board looking into this and getting back to us to let us know what the solution is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I just had a couple of comments about a story I read about the stormwater runoff, and in about 2 years, there'll probably be an additional fee or tax assessed to every homeowner. I'm curious because I'm not really privy to what exactly this encompasses, but are we talking about like the stormwater that runs off your roof that might have contaminants on it? Are we talking about stuff that rolls off the roadway into people's yards? How your property is leveled out so it doesn't affect your neighbor? Like, I don't understand how people are going to be taxed on that or feed on that. But I have concerns because I have a storm drain in front of my house that floods every time it rains and floods water into my yard. Luckily, it doesn't affect my crawl space where my furnace is. But the town doesn't seem to come out and check the drains. So, like, am I going to be responsible for stormwater that comes off the roadways that I'm already paying excise tax for my car to be on the road here? And I guess all that money actually stays here. So I'm just curious exactly what this all encompasses. I understand like the runoff of like stuff in the roadways into the drains and stuff like that. But like, are we talking about how your home affects that too as well? Like, I just don't understand. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Megan Perry online.
Thank you, Dawn. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I guess there seems to be some confusion that I'm looking for a comment out of this board, not looking for a comment on something. I'm looking for some action from this board with regards to the work that's being done at Surfside Crossing. And if this board is feeling uncomfortable maybe doing something, maybe you could talk to the building commissioner about going out, visiting the site, inspecting the site, making sure that proper precautions are in place to protect the residents of Nantucket, not just the developers of this project. I know they're partners with the town on a number of other things, but it would be nice if we were maybe in the thought of protecting all the residents of Nantucket. So again, I'm not looking for a comment. I'm just looking for action out of this board. Thank you guys very much. Have a wonderful night.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, there's no new business that I'm aware of. We will move on to approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. I'd like to take items 1 through 3 first.
I'll move approval of 1, 2, 3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0. And then on pending contracts, are there questions, concerns?
Yes, the chair. I'm wanted to bring up the groundwater modeling to support the Easy Street flood mitigation project for $276,800. And I wanted to suggest that we hold off on this until a later date, because I think we're going to be looking at the capital projects related to all coastal resiliency projects. And I thought it would be better to get an overview to include what studies are going to be needed for that. And is this one of them? I think it is. I think it applies to a lot of the different projects, but I think until we have a fuller view of all of the coastal resiliency projects and the prioritization that we're going to have, I thought it'd be nice to just set this one aside until a later date. Not disagreeing with the project, but with the study.
Jeff Carlson?
I don't know why it's.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Jeff Carlson, Natural Resources Director. I do think Joe brings up a good point about making sure that all of our projects are synced up. And for a little bit of background on this project specifically, this was a data gap that was identified during the original Easy Street flood barrier project for something that we needed to look at for, I'm coming off of a cold, so I'm a little scratchy. But looking at it as far as how groundwater is moving within the downtown area up and down and fluctuating and how that's going to change over time as we look at options, whether they be flood barriers, changes in road elevations, any of the stormwater systems in that area. And we really thought that it was part of that project and syncing up, but it also provides some co-benefits for the study area. I know it's tough to see in the proposal. If those haven't seen it, it's pretty extensive where the model is looking at, it spreads out kind of past, just for geography purposes, kind of closer to the Life Saving Museum on the one end, all the way through Jetty's Beach and kind of the big box around. So we could understand how groundwater is moving through there. It ties in with our existing Nantucket Harbor watershed redelineation that's going on. And we really find it a very valuable piece of information. I don't disagree that there's a lot of coastal resiliency projects, and I know we're going to talk about a lot of them later in the meeting. As far as the capital prioritization, I think we feel like this is part of an existing project. We have been talking with both Wanakama and the Land Bank that have an interest in this, and they may step up to contribute a little bit more or participate in a greater manner, but we would appreciate the opportunity to get this aspect of the project kind of underway and going, and are happy to discuss how we're going to prioritize coastal resiliency projects going forward on the larger scale as well.
Jeff, before you go, can you explain the timeline of procurement, and if we don't approve this, what the impact is on getting this work done just in the larger context? Like if it's piece of a bigger puzzle and we don't do it now, we don't execute this contract, what happens
Sure.
in terms of?
It is part of the larger scope with the Easy Street project, so it would slow that project down slightly for getting options back to the public and the board to look at. Obviously, if we're talking, a 2-week delay or a 2-month delay, that's a very different discussion. I think obviously for procurement, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. The project's ready to go. Our contractor's ready to go and get started. So we'd like to start as soon as possible just to get that underway. But if there are questions that are needed to be addressed related to the project, I think we'd be happy to address those.
No, go ahead.
So I guess my question is, does the bid have an expiration date? Like if we don't execute it by a certain time, or do you think the contractor would be willing to postpone till we have?
I think there would
this board
probably
has better contracts?
there would probably be some flexibility.
Okay.
I would like to pull this for now, or at least if we're not going to pull a vote on it separately. I want to get a better understanding as to what the coastal resiliency overall project is. I mean, this is a huge number. We're talking about $500 million, north of $500 million. And I want to know what we've spent money on so far. I mean, we'll get to this when we get to the CIP, but I looked at this, Jeff, you've got $1 million in your budget for the next 10 years on top of the 550 million. I want to know where it's all going before we just approve this. And if I'm correct, this is what we already did downtown where they drill the holes and put the monitors in. Is that correct? It's similar to that type of work?
Yes, it's related. We're able to reuse those borings and monitoring wells for this project.
But we'd have to drill more of them around the island and other places, and this is not the time of year to be drilling holes. So I would just like to pull this for now and get a better understanding of everything that's planned here before, and then we can bring it back at that point.
So real quickly, and I apologize for interrupting it through you, Madam Chair. Most of the wells that are in place are already in place related to a different project that has occurred and is occurring for monitoring wells. I don't think there would be a substantial amount of new ones, but we would definitely, not want to be rocking the boat for people to get around and blocking traffic or doing things if we could avoid that.
Erica?
I would just note too that any kind of project like this requires street blocking permits and street opening permits, and I would never issue those in July or August. So just know that.
That was actually the rush the last time, was to get done before the season, but those were geotechnical borings for soil stability evaluation.
So, I mean, I guess my question is, what information are you or all of us looking for, and what do we need to do to be ready to answer this question, basically, on whether we can execute this contract?
Well, I want to know what we've spent the money on to date and how much we've spent, because it seems like we've given money every year to coastal resiliency and to this, and I haven't seen anything built. I've seen some holes drilled. It sounds like we spent a lot of money on studies, but we haven't done anything else. So I just want to get a better understanding for it before I vote for any more spending on it.
Sure. We did provide that information to Capital Program Committee and to FinCom, so we're happy to forward that along if that would be helpful. But if, again, not to press, but similar to Don's, if there's questions specific to this proposal, we're happy to get that information too. I just want to make sure that we can do that.
Yeah, I think the way this was brought up was that it looks like it is supposed to support the Easy Street flood mitigation project. And then now we're talking about how it really will support all the projects. And so I think that sounds like a better idea. But I'm kind of looking for a flow chart that shows the studies and actually where those studies flow to for the projects, so that we can have a fuller discussion for everything. That's really all I'm looking for. I think I'm a new member and I'm trying to get my arms around everything that's happened. I know I look at things in isolation on the Capital Committee, and we're going to talk about that later. And I think what we're trying to do is look at things a little holistically. And I think that'd be super helpful for me. That's all.
Sure, that's helpful.
So why don't I make a motion to pull this one, and then a motion to approve all the other pending contracts, and then request that Jeff get back to us with sort of the extent to which that this contract applies to all, the data we need to gather to assess coastal resilience projects. I mean, I feel like that's what it is, but I'd love a little more information about that.
And
So,
the spending and things that have
Yep.
been done to date.
Yep.
Yes, is there a second?
A second with a question.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. And I'm not going to vote no on these, but the DPW Central Fleet purchases for trucks, and the prices seem very good, but I'm just trying to figure out how we can buy a truck in 2026 with an appropriation from 2022. How does that work? I mean, do we have like a pile of money left over from 22 that we're going to spend? And if I bought a truck this year, it's going to go up at least 10% a year over the next 4 years. So how do we buy a truck in 2026 with an appropriation from 2022?
Drew is online.
Drew Patnode?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Bob, to answer your question, so those appropriations, I believe, were originally from 2022. The amounts requested then included plows and spreaders. These are being purchased without the plows and spreaders, and we've purchased those separately for these vehicles. So, not really sure why they weren't purchased back then. They've been in need for a while, but we're going to get the vehicles and we have the attachments to go with them.
All right, just for my own personal, in the future, if we're going to appropriate money to buy vehicles, we should buy them in the year that we appropriate the money, or we should put the money back. It just seems strange that we're buying vehicles 4 years out that are brand new vehicles. So when we appropriate the money, it seems like it doesn't make sense to me. So I just wanted to make a point of that.
Okay. Anything else on the motion? All those in, oh, Jill?
I just want to ask Drew another question if I can.
Yeah.
So Drew, with the vehicles that we authorized this year, because it's over $2 million of vehicles, do you think we're going to see those in the next year to purchase those? Because we have another F-350 this year, I believe.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, since I started in 2023, all the vehicles we've appropriated money for each year have been purchased that fiscal year. Sometimes the lead time may be a year or more, but these are the only two vehicles that were still lingering from prior to my time.
That's great. Thank you, Drew.
Okay. Can we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. And we are going to hold the coastal resilience contract for some more information, and we'll put it on the next available agenda once that's put together. Okay. All right. Next up, we are moving to citizen departmental committee requests and reports. Our first item is the African Meeting House investigation of the investigation report issuance and review. I do believe that we have a quorum of the procurement work group. So I think that should be called to order before we start taking comments.
So I'll step in. The select board placed me on the work group when Dr. McNabb's term ended. So I just will call that work group meeting to order. And present are Cliff Williams, Luke Thornwell, Dr. Noel Trent. Anyone else from that group? Anyone online from that group? Okay, so that is a quorum.
Okay. So the full report, as well as the executive summary, is in our packet, and I'm sure that there are some questions. I don't know if you wanted to make any opening statements, Brooke, but otherwise I will go to questions from the public, and we will be limiting to 3 minutes.
Actually, Dawn, can I
Yes.
just make a quick
Go
statement? I just wanted to reiterate the process by which the report made its way from the firm to tonight for the public record. The report was issued directly to town council. It was reviewed by town council, and David Jenkins is here from town council for any potential conflicts or issues around employee privacy or union contracts. And there were some requests from town council to privatize some things with regard to that. And then the report was made public to everyone simultaneously when it was issued in our packet, when our public packet was posted on Friday. So no members of town administration, the select board, the work group had access to the report until it was posted publicly on in our packet on Friday. So that's all I'll say. And then we're all here together to talk about it.
Thank you. Clifford?
Yeah, can I make a point of order before I start? Why just 3 minutes?
We're limiting all public comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, I didn't think it was a public comment. I thought it was a meeting for the African Meeting House to discuss the investigation.
Yes, but to keep a handle on the meeting, I have
Okay.
to limit each person to 3 minutes, and that's our policy.
All right. I guess I'll start out again by commenting on the fact that the investigators did their investigation, and the title page talks about them looking at the work that the police department did, but that's about 1/5 of what they were supposed to do. There's probably more questions than answers for me, at least, and that's why I think it's more important that this group stay together and look at this report and discuss this report and review what needs to be done in the future. Seeing those were also key points in the RFP that were left out. I know there was Freedom of Information Act requests by Barbara Burgle that were redacted. I asked questions to that as far as where the investigation was, because the town attorney stated that they had to redact because it was an ongoing investigation. But yet, if you read the report, redactions were taken out for the investigators. So it's kind of confusing. That's just one of many things. There was a bunch of people that needed to be interviewed. When I talked to the investigator the one time, then he wouldn't respond back to me again. Jim Brigham is his name. I think we just need to regroup as a group and address all these questions and move on from there and answer all these inconsistencies that we have. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
So if some of you know, I am Barbara Burgo. I have been coming here for almost 2 years to these meetings to get to this point. And like Cliff, so I live in Brewster. I am the former chair of the Barnstable County Human Rights Commission, and I'm a former elected official from Brewster for the Housing Authority Commission. I am also a critical race theorist by training in college. I'm a cultural anthropology major. Magna cum laude. I too have, again, more questions than answers with this. It looks at the face thorough. But like Cliff just said, it was supposed to be an investigation of the investigation with all of these other departments to be investigated. I must admit, and so I'm going to say if I'm wrong, that I haven't gotten through every single page. I started with the beginning. Vandalism. As we all know, the words on that building said, "Nigger leave," with a phallic symbol. It looks like a penis to me and some peeing coming out of it. This is a serious business, and you should know. It has been reframed as vandalism. I think it's a critical race theory, minimalistic view of a racial hate crime if it says nigger leave. It's been called an incident. It's a racial hate crime on a national historic building. I don't think it was taken seriously enough from the beginning. And some of that is repeated in here. It's called graffiti. Semantics. It's a hate crime, and I wonder why it didn't reach that level. Brooke said in the May 13th meeting that she went to and said, what a great conversation. I don't think enough of the folks understand the impact and racism in our community. And now can we have a more open and honest discussion? I was ready for an open and honest discussion, except we're limited to 3 minutes again. I thought as well that that was only public comment. Race crime was not investigated sufficiently enough, in my humble opinion.
Good evening, everyone, to the chair and the select board. I am Dr. Noelle Trent, president and CEO of the Museum of African American History, Boston and Nantucket. We are the stewards of the African Meeting House, the place where this incident happened. And unfortunately, there are not enough descriptive words around this. The previous speaker, I think, illuminated to the nature of what happened, the crime that what happened on March 2018. We are grateful for this report. There were some very clear things that came out around the process. I think there were a lot of questions. I myself have been with the organization since 2023, June of 2023. So it did bring to clarity as to what happened, how things happened, and what were the missteps or opportunities for growth in that. I will say that we do have our stakeholders and our board watching. Unfortunately, because of the weather, they couldn't be here, but this has been a journey to get to this point, and we are grateful that there has been a revealing of what happened. It has become very clear from this that this may be as far as we can get with this result. This negatively impacted the organization, its staff, and its visitors. It has impacted our visitation. And so we are hopeful that with these results, that this illustrious group will take this to put together an action plan in the future. We do not want any of our peer organizations or individuals in this community to ever go through the trauma of which we experienced and what we have gone through over the last 8 years. We are very appreciative for the citizens who brought this forward and for the select board's courage to make sure that this actually happened. I have had the fortunate to be part of the working group and being part of this process. So I just want to say thank you. I understand how challenging this has been for us as a community. And we do hope that as we move forward, that we can continue our relationship with the select board and the community and look at how we can continue to preserve and promote the illustrious work of the African Meeting House and what it means to this community. It has been here since 1825, and it will continue to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mary Longacre online.
Thank you, Dawn. I'd like to thank Dr. Trent from the Museum of African American History for appearing today and participating in the process. I want to follow up on her suggestion that perhaps we have reached the limit of what this particular process can produce as a result. And I'd like to suggest that perhaps we have to consider that town government has lost the trust of a portion of this community. And perhaps the better way forward at this point would be to ask the question, how can we regain that trust through some other form of, I'm struggling for the word here. I'm going to use the word reparation, although I know that that has certain connotations and I'm not intending any particular connotation. But I don't think that enough has been done to recognize the severity of what I would also call a racial hate crime, not an incident. I hope that these comments are helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Amy Eldridge. I want to agree with all the previous speakers. I mean, it's a horrible situation that occurred. I was in Hyannis when I saw the alert at act.net that something had happened, and happened to be a weekend. There was a lot of Nantucketers in the lobby crying. I was impressed with how quickly the community came together and cleaned up the situation. But I do think that like our due diligence wasn't done from Jump Street. If that had happened to the oldest house, the Whaling Museum, the 1800 house, would we have looked at something completely different? I think so. And I think it's really important that that building is hugely important to this community, whether you're African American or not. I've attended Christmas Eve masses there, hosted by Reverend Thomas Richard. I've seen weddings there. I've actually performed in musical concerts there. It is a cultural center for everybody. And I think that the disrespect shown from the start has been horrendous, and that we didn't do enough in a timely fashion by turning this over to the proper authorities where there was no bias soon enough. And I think that it's a regrettable thing. And I think we need to learn how to move forward. And I do feel like there were some questions left in what I saw in the summarization. There were things that were done wrong, and there were things that were done right, but the things that were done wrong aren't fair to the community and the people that suffered. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak this evening? A couple of the previous speakers had mentioned a number of questions that they have about the report. I'm just wondering how to get at those questions. Luke?
Luke Thornwell from the work group. My name's Luke Thornwell. I'm from the work group. I want to thank everyone for what I've heard from the people speak out. There's been a lot of very good thoughts. This is a tragedy. I'm not sure exactly where we go from here. There were good things in that report. There were clearly things that were missing, and there have been failures throughout the process, work group process, and obviously based on that report in the real investigation. But my hope is that we can find a way to move forward and hopefully to answer some of the questions that have been brought up here in one way or another as a means of protecting the future interests. I would also just like to say that from the standpoint of a town conversation, the Dreamland on August 5th is going to be showing a film called Stories from the Balcony, which is my sister Joanna Hay actually documented, was the creator of, and it's an incredible story about racism in Frankfort, Kentucky. And I think that the town would be well moved to go and see this movie, because racism exists on all levels. It's a very difficult situation we're in now. But I hope there'll be healing at the end. Thank you.
I don't see anyone else coming up to speak, but I don't want to pass by and not, and have anyone feel like they have not had their questions answered. So if Mr. Williams or Ms. Burgo have specific questions that can be answered, we do have counsel here. And I'd like to give you a little bit of additional time because it's only 6:10 and I'd like to make sure that you feel heard. Campbell?
Hi, Campbell Sutton. I just wanted to say that I appreciated the report. And I'm really hoping that in the background here, this is going to our police chief and detectives, and we're going to have some revamping. Like, I'm sort of assuming this, but I'd just like to get that out into the public because we're having more and more unfortunate incidences that seem quite violent upon property and upon people. And I think we need to have, our officers need to be up to snuff and doing the absolute best job that they possibly can in all of these instances. Thank you.
That being said, like Barbara mentioned, there's so much to read and so many inconsistencies. We're talking about moving on. Well, I don't think we can move on until we answer a lot of these questions. And I think that's why the working group should stay together and get to the bottom of what was done, what wasn't done, why it was done that way, and just answer these questions. There's so many of them. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask Town Council John Giorgio to explain what the charge of the work group, this procurement work group was. So the community is aware of the scope of their purpose, because I think that there's some misunderstanding, and I'm not sure where that persistent misunderstanding has come from. So,
John Giorgio, may I recognize you? And then I'll come back to you, Ms. Burgo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you all hear me? Great. So I would like to start by reading the actual motion that was made at town meeting, and that was May 7th, 2024. I move that the town vote to direct the select board to undertake an investigation into the hate crime at the historic African Meeting House committed in 2018. Moreover, to review the investigation conducted by town administration, the select board, Nantucket Police Department, Cape and Islands District Attorney, and the Attorney General's Office, and further to transfer from free cash the sum of $60,000 for this purpose. So it's important to understand that $60,000 was appropriated for the purposes set forth in the actual motion that town meeting voted. And after that motion passed, there was an attempt by the select board to work with the proponents of that article, that motion, to basically design a process for conducting the investigation that was called for. And there was quite a bit of discussion. I believe it was in the fall of 2005. And then the select board determined that really, in order to get this work done, there should be a work group formed to advise the select board with respect to the procurement of an investigator. And that work was done early in 2006, I believe.
John, you just said 2006.
I believe it's 2005, right? I think I had that wrong.
25.
Oh, 2006. Yeah, it's 25, right? So the procurement office drafted an RFP. The work group was involved as they were directed by the select board. to assist in the development of the RFP. Um, and and they were a vital part of the process of selecting the investigative firm. And that was done. And then in the fall of 2025, some questions came up about what would be the continuing role of the work group once the investigator was on board. And a contract was signed, I believe, in October. And then in the November timeframe, the select board met, and there was a discussion of what the proper role of the work group would be. And the board at that time adopted a motion that essentially said the primary purpose of the work group was to assist in the procurement. But if the investigator had any specific questions of the work group, the investigator should work through the chair of that work group and with town council, and we would get those questions answered by the work group. As it turns out, the investigator had a lot of work to do, was looking for a lot of documentation, made a number of requests for documents, and asked for direction. And the then chair of the work group, Dr. McNabb, asked me to assist him in answering those questions, which we did. And Dr. McNabb had some very good revisions to what I had put down on paper, and we sent those responses back to the investigator. And then in the January, February time, really March timeframe of 2026, we provided through the records access officer, responses to a myriad of very, very detailed requests for information that the investigator had. There was mention earlier about redacted versions of the police reports, and that was done at our recommendation because those police reports, as they should, contained a lot of identifying information of a lot of people. And there was a concern that the privacy rights of those individuals would be implicated. So we provided, pursuant to the public records request that Ms. Burgo made, we submitted a redacted version. The investigator wanted to see the unredacted version, and they signed a confidentiality agreement, and we did provide an unredacted version of those reports to the investigator. They did their work. As we know, Dr. McNabb sadly left the board in May, but the investigation went on. The report was prepared, and just as the select board directed, we did a pre-release review of that report. Just to make sure that there were no privacy right implications. And there were a few technical issues. For example, at one point, the investigative report referred to the Board of Selectmen. We wanted to make sure that it was the proper name of the board, which, as we all know, is Select Board, was in the record, the permanent record of the investigation. So we also recommended to the investigator, because it was like a 75-page report, we recommended that the investigator prepare an executive summary for the ease, to make it more accessible to more people. And he did that. It took him a little bit of time, but we literally received the report back from the investigator early. I believe it was last week. We approved it. We sent it to the town. And as Brooke said, nobody from the town saw that report, not the selectmen, nobody in town administration. Everybody saw that at the same time, other than town council. And that was when last Friday it was put in the select board packet. And now we're here tonight. So that's the background, but it's really important that everyone understand that the select board, as a policy matter, set forth the scope of the work group's involvement after the procurement was completed. And there was an opportunity for the investigator to ask without restriction Any questions that he or members of his team had of the work group, I don't believe there were any questions, at least they didn't come through me, that he made. So that's where we are.
Thank you, John. Barbara Burgo.
Okay. So the summary is to summarize. It's not to make things more transparent or get to the nitty gritty details of an not incident, a hate crime. On November 4th, 2025, the summary says that the organization did go looking to the town of Nantucket for information. And about the redacted, since Barbara Burgo's name was put on there, I did get a redacted sunshine law report. It then said they had to send a second request for an unredacted because they didn't say it before. The summary does not say that the attorney had them sign a confidentiality statement. Well, then why couldn't I have signed a confidentiality statement? Why is it that after a second request, and we were asking how long is this going to take? Selectman Fee, you had asked for expedience with all of this, and I thanked you. It took 2.5 months to get that unredacted piece of information. Okay, that's part of the summary. The summary also says, in addition to materials obtained, LCG submitted formal public records requests to Massachusetts State Police. As of the date of this report, those requests remain pending. And responsive records have not been produced. Accordingly, the information contained here is based on the materials currently available. We collectively have many more materials available than was in this report. I was offered by Select Woman Holgate to be a part of this. I couldn't be on, or I don't know why, because my name was on the first initial Article 26 to be part of the working group, but I agreed. At least Select Woman Holgate said, we would welcome your input. If you look at the first work group meeting, Dr. Trent and Rocky and a couple of others said, we don't need anybody else on this. I was not welcome. So you didn't hear from me for quite a while because I don't go where I'm not welcome, usually, unless I'm going where they say nigger leave. Then I make myself welcome. Because this is not going to be whitewashed like you whitewashed the building before all of the details, the facts, the DNA, fingerprints, or anything else happened. It was whitewashed. We called the folks at the Boston Meeting House, African Museum, many times before Dr. Trent got here. She's just a late comer, and there was a lot that was ignored even by them. With all due respect, don't disrespect me when I know what I'm talking about. And then there's a whole list of things. I had asked the police department for everything to do with this investigation. Well, how come there was said that there was an officer present when they interviewed a juvenile whose mother also works for the town, and maybe that was going to be looked upon as a conflict of interest, and maybe not. And then they have this list of 77 audio files, 11 video files, 24. So we went through the state for the Sunshine Law, and I was not given what I asked for. I wonder why. The attorney also just said that you decided through a chair of the committee that questions could be answered and somebody would chair. We had said many, many months ago, who decided to put McNabb as chair anyway? Did anybody else on the board get a chance to offer to be chair? Did they get asked? So it, to me, like Cliff is saying, if you were supposed to be also reviewing the select board's part in all of this, how could a select board member be chair? And I got calls over and over and over again saying Cliff wanted a meeting. He was here. Cliff wanted a meeting. McNabb didn't answer him. I sat at home and watched Rocky sit here and say, you need somebody that looks like me on the board. Where is he? You know it was me that talked to you in all good faith to say that I think that was a severe conflict of interest. But he said right here, I've put so much money into this town. Oh, is that how you don't get somebody like me on the board, but somebody like Rocky? Was it the money? Brooke, and so the last thing, I will end with this. Brooke and the chief of police initially had 3 organizations to look at. Selectwoman Moore, let me be a little more precise and polite with that. We had a wonderful conversation, and she said, and you know it's at one of the meetings, it's on this face, that we were going to pick out of these 3. They decided which 3, and she decided on one. And she talked to me and Gail on a Zoom call, and it was deemed by Tom, who is no longer here, and Chairwoman Holgate, that it was not a very transparent procedure. So that is how, what the lawyer isn't saying is that is how the second procedure then became part of this. You all agreed it wasn't transparent. Well, this whole situation hasn't been very transparent in my book.
Thank you. Make one more point. I'm glad retired town attorney was here tonight. He makes a great point, and Brooke brought it up. There was an original article written, and we were told it was against the law, or for some reason it had to be changed and morphed. And then he's just admitted that it's been morphed again. And then page 8 talks about how the person who's, or the investigative team, and that's another point, was I thought it was a team, not an investigator. That's why we hired them. We were going to work closely with them, and we haven't done any of that. They won't even speak to us. So I think that's why we have to continue on, like I said, with the committee, some form of a committee to go through all this information and make sense of it. Thanks.
I'm not sure that there was any really specific question that council can answer. So I hope that very quickly, you've had about 10 minutes already.
So there is a specific question where I left off, and I just meant to say that. And it was the part where I read about, I'm sorry. It was the part where I read about based on this material's availability, they didn't get the state police. So my question, I wrote it here, and I wanted to get to a couple of other things the attorney said before I forgot, and I forgot the question. When will there be a follow-up to this report upon state police providing the required information? Okay.
Is that to John? John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, it's important that you read that report in its entirety, because you shouldn't rely merely on the executive summary. But it's my understanding from reading the report that the investigator did speak with both representatives of the state police and representatives of the district attorney's office. The state police deferred to the district attorney, and that's why there's a statement in there that the state police would not provide any of its records. They work in essence for the district attorney's office, and it was the DA's office that had most of the interface between with the investigator. My understanding is that the district attorney did provide relevant information. One of the things that is not mentioned, hasn't been mentioned, is that the statute of limitations has passed on a lot of the on the hate crime, and that's just a fact of that's reality. But certainly in my conversations and in my reading the report, the district attorney did review this file, did talk with the investigator about the results of the investigation. And the bottom line is that there was, other than what's stated in that report, there was no basis to indict or prosecute anyone else based upon the evidence. And that's important, based upon the evidence. So you can't just cherry pick information. You've got to read that report in its entirety. I, for one, was impressed with how thorough that investigation was. They were not denied a single scrap of information from the town. We bent over backwards to provide everything, all of the policies, all of the statistics, all of the police reports. In the heat of the moment, the report does say that that maybe a better job could have been done about preservation of evidence. But if we go back to the day after this crime and the vile and disgusting things that were put on that building, I can certainly understand the motivation to not allow that to stand on such a beautiful, historically significant building. Not that they would have recovered DNA or fingerprints or anything like that. That was a decision that was made in order to provide some comfort to the community. And I so totally understand that. There were no laws broken. There was good and accepted police investigative tactics. That was the conclusion of the investigator time and time again. And when you read that report, it comes through loud and clear. But don't lose sight of the fact that this was primarily, the direction was not to reinvestigate this crime. That was the job of the state police. Well, first the police department, the state police, and ultimately the district attorney. They all did that job, and they did it very well on balance. The purpose of this was to get to the bottom, to investigate the investigation that was conducted. And when you read that report, I think it comes through loud and clear that there was no evidence of any crimes committed, and there were conclusion after conclusion that the police conducted a thorough investigation. And if I would encourage everyone in the room and online and in the town to really look at that report. You can draw your own conclusions, but I think that the town spent a lot of money on this report. That investigator was completely independent. He was a professional, and I think they did their job. Now is the time to move forward and figure out, I agree with all the comments, are there things that can occur now internally at the police department and elsewhere to make sure that that the police officials are properly trained and that the issues identified in that report are addressed. And it's my understanding that the police chief is already hard at work doing that. And that is the outcome. That is the best outcome that I think we all can anticipate. And I think that's happening as we speak.
I'd like to piggyback on what Mr. Georgia is saying. The history of this is the history of this. The report indicates the investigation was imperfect. I don't hold myself to a standard of perfection. I don't know anyone in the room who can hold themselves to a standard of perfection. I think that it's clear this independent review of the investigation indicates that the police followed protocol their own and took this hate crime seriously. They considered it a racial crime. They considered it a hate crime at the time. It's clear in the documentation. Where we are today is the DA concluded that there was no evidence available. Whether one believes the investigation either at the local level or the state level could have been better, we can't undo that. And we are where we are. The DA reviewed, the grand jury decided not to issue an order. They issued what's called a no bill to send to prosecution the individual who later was found civilly responsible for the crime. This was reported in 2022 by both the Nantucket Current and the Inquirer and Mirror. A man named Dylan Ponce was found civilly liable for the incident. Another individual, Jeffrey Sale, was prosecuted for obstructing the investigation, hiding evidence, and he was there was an outcome from that prosecution. This has gone criminally as far as it is going to go. And I believe that as a community, we failed in the aftermath of this incident to have the conversations that we needed to have. And I would like to see us take this report, not put the incident behind us, but put the focus on this behind us and have the community conversations we need to have. And I've said this publicly before. Someone thought that it was okay to do this in our community. I want to know why that person thought it was okay to do that in this community. That makes me very uncomfortable. And I believe that the select board can work in partnership with the African Meeting House, perhaps, to have some programming. I loved the idea of people attending that film on racism. I think that's a great start. I believe we can do a better job in this community to identify, recognize, acknowledge, and address the existence of racism here in our community. We've done a really good job of hiding our warts for as long as I've been coming here, since 1985. Housing insecurity, food insecurity, all of the things that we've pretended didn't exist are no longer undercover, and this is one more. And I'm willing to be part of that process, and I think the board should commit resources to that process moving forward. But please, how this investigation went and the conspiracy theories around it, I think we need to move on from that and do the work to recover as a community from the harm that was caused by this incident, which indicates things that we need to address as a community. So that's where I'm at with this, and I will start with taking this results of this report and asking the police chief to review policies and procedures and trainings within the police department around racial sensitivity and how our officers interact in our community with our beautiful and highly diverse community. And then I think we need to do things that like community engagement to make sure that the voices of our diverse community are heard throughout the decisions that this board makes and we make as a community. There is work to be done. Let's move forward and do that work. And I'll leave it at that.
You done? Yeah,
Matt.
I was going to ask that the police chief come and fill us in on, changes that they've made and how, look, I look at the report and there's plenty that we could do better. And I think that, moving forward, I think she should come and fill us in, fill in the community. I think that we talk about trust. I think some of the actions that were taken, hurt the trust here. And I think that, how are we ensuring that those things don't happen again? And I think that because if you're going to build trust, you've got to build it. And I think that that can be done. I agree. We can't go backwards, and and the state police and the DA and they're done. I don't think any of these guys are going to come back and solve this for us or reopen it or do any of that. But I think that we could, on island, we could see what we can do. And so, yeah, and how do I say it? It's been difficult for everybody, and I don't think there's nobody that is happy with what happened there and that is happy that it's taken us this long to get here. But, I always sort of talk about the speed of government. We're moving at the speed of government. It's not as easy as I thought it would be when I got here. And I think that we're trying. So thank you.
Clifford, one final comment.
Yeah, I'm glad Brooke wants to get to the bottom of it. If we had followed the RFP, had things in there like geofence warrants on everybody that was a suspect. We've never done geofence warrants. I don't know why. They do them all the time, which would triangulate your phone where you were at. Like I said, if they had met with us, we had people that would speak to them and give them information. You say you didn't have the evidence. Well, you might have had the evidence if you had just followed the RFP. And I want to make a good point. I think the toughest job in this town is a police officer. So I think there's just a few bad actors. I don't. When you say police department, I don't want to paint a wide brush on the whole department. It's just a few people, I believe. Thank you.
Luke.
I just want to say thank you for a lot of what I'm hearing. Personally, it's really very, very healing. I have to tell you that in terms of us trying to understand who we are and why things happen, this island has a massive alcohol and drug problem. And if you want to look at where problems often come from, you talk to the police department, because they'll tell you a lot of the problems, a lot of the worst things that humans do are firing right out of bottles and from pills. I'm starting at NantucketAngelWarriors.org. You should look at it. It's a teenage movement right now on the island. If you want to protect our teenagers, if we want to act as adults, I think one of the big things we have to focus on as an island is the massive problem we have with alcohol. Thank you.
My daughter is an angel warrior. And she just graduated. And I will echo the wonderful diversity of our community. There were well over 30 flags of nations represented during her high school graduation. And I think that we should be celebrating that and embracing it and trying to move forward from this awful hate crime in any way we can. Is it all right if I move on now? To the
Can I
next
just make one
agenda
final
item? You
comment?
need to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, yeah. So can I have a motion to adjourn the work group meeting from someone in the work group? That's Cliff, seconded by Dr. Trent. All those in favor? Just say aye. Aye. Thank you. And just finally, I want to thank everyone for their honesty and for coming forward. And I look forward to working with everyone. This is not the end. It's the end of a step, but not the end.
And Dr. McNabb was present. Thank you, Malcolm, for being here. Okay, number 2, Housing Department update on Chapter 40B Housing Production Plan. And I see Dylan coming up.
Good evening. I'm Dylan Metchampel. I'm the town's deputy housing director. I'm just going to speak briefly because I have Tony Young and I believe Judy Barrett online who are actually going to run through the presentation. But I just wanted to give a brief update. So staff have been working with Barrett Planning to update the town's housing production plan since last summer. The last time it was fully updated was 2021. We do it in 5-year cycles. Like I said, I'm not going to get too into the weeds because that's what Judy and Tony are here for. But just as a reminder, the housing production plan guides housing policy and development in 5-year increments, and the document itself is critical and required for staying in safe harbor under Chapter 40B. So Judy and Tony are going to update you on the work that we've been doing and sort of give you a little bit of preparation for when we return at your August 19th meeting, hopefully with a fully completed draft. And with that, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Tony and Judy.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, everyone. Good to see all of you. Are you running the slides from here? I guess you are from there. I guess you must be. Yes.
I can do them.
Okay. I just wasn't sure. It looked like you had them up. So hi, everyone. Judy Barrett, my colleague Tony's here, who's done a lion's share of the work on this project. I think we thought it was important to just come and check in with the board, let you know how this project has been going. And give you a sense of the timeline for completing it, because as you probably remember, for those of you who were on the board before when we did this, the select board does have an important role in the approval and submission process to the Executive Office of Housing and Housing and Livable Communities. So we're just going to run through some slides here about this project and hope to be able to answer any questions that you may have. You want to go to the next slide? So we're going to explain to you, especially because you have a couple of new members, just what a housing production plan is, what the state requirements are, because there are certain standards that must be met for the plan to be approvable. Talk a little bit about some local needs and that we've been identified in this process. We're not going to go into the weeds on it, but we do want to give you a little flavor for it. What the goals and strategies are that are in the draft, what the engagement process has been to date, what your role and the planning board's role is in the adoption process, and then the overall project schedule. Next slide. So as you probably remember, there is a state regulated planning framework for cities and towns to work toward the 10% requirement under Chapter 40B, which is the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Law. It was instituted about 25 years ago. Nantucket has done a really laudable job with this program since you started doing housing production plans around 2010 or 11. The intent of the plan is to reward communities that make steady progress toward the 10% minimum, as you have been doing over the past several years. You're one of the few communities in Massachusetts that has had a certified plan more than once. So credit to the town. The primary focus of the plan is local initiative steps the community will take to address low and moderate income housing needs. Specifically, that is the focus of this plan. It's not the only focus, but it is a state requirement because the umbrella for all of this is, of course, Chapter 40B. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little heads up on how the subsidized housing inventory works and why it sort of matters in this framework. Next slide. In order for housing to count on the subsidized housing inventory, it has to be affordable to households with incomes at or below 80% of what's called the area median income, and I will show these income limits in a minute. The units have to be deed restricted for rental or sale to lower moderate income households. The housing has to be made available on a fair and open basis to people who are income eligible. So there has to be what we call a affirmative fair housing marketing requirement. And then the units have to be monitored for compliance with those deed restrictions. So those are kind of core requirements for subsidized housing inventory eligibility. There are, lower moderate income units that may be eligible if it's a rental development, and at least 25% of the units in the rental development are affordable to lower moderate income households, then all of the units will count. But that's not the same for homeownership. So there's an incentive built into the guidelines, if you will, for this planning process to encourage towns to create more rental housing, because statewide anyway, it's a critical need. And I realize in Nantucket, the conversation is much bigger than that, but just so you understand the framework. For any units that you create that do not involve a comprehensive permit, which has been most of the housing you guys have, that's on the subsidized housing inventory, the town is responsible for monitoring for compliance with the restrictions. So a development that is done by a developer under a more conventional comprehensive permit process, the subsidizing agency, it might typically be a group like Mass Housing, they monitor the deed restrictions. But when you're creating units on your own through CPA revenue or Affordable Housing Trust, you are responsible for the monitoring. So it's an important piece of understanding how the SHI works. Next slide, please. So the income limits, I'm not going to read all these numbers to you, but just to give you a little sense, for a family of four at 80% of area median income, where you are, it's $131,700. I don't think anybody has an actual family of four anymore, but we just all use that number. And so that is sort of the upper limit of the income limits for housing eligible for the subsidized housing inventory. Of course, in Nantucket, there are concerns about a broader range of incomes. So we just added to this chart a sense of like, how does the state see so-called workforce income ranges on up to the 250% area median income, which I think is the currently desired target for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And so if you get up that high, then the four-person household is $455,000. So these are like a range of incomes that exist in your community that you will be concerned about. But the focus of the plan is those numbers that are 80% or below, which are the numbers in the sort of white side of this table. Next slide, please. You can go on to the next one. So the Commonwealth has pretty simple, straightforward requirements. They're not always that simple to meet, but just to explain what they are, there has to be a comprehensive housing needs assessment. And so Tony did just yeoman's work on this to sort of shed light on what the needs are from a demographic perspective, looking at population and household projections, what's happening with the housing market, which of course has changed dramatically even since the last time we did this plan 5 years ago. An analysis of the constraints for housing production, which are typically environmental constraints, infrastructure, local regulations, and all of those apply in Nantucket as well. There have to be goals in the plan, and there are two types of goals that must be included. One are sort of qualitative goals, which is as our town continues to grow and we create units that are eligible for the SHI, what do we want that housing to be? And what types of households are we trying to assist? And then there also has to be sort of a numeric goal, which is a number that becomes the sort of desired target from the state's perspective as to how much production might qualify the town to take an approved plan and have the state certify it as being consistent with the plan because you have produced additional housing. And I'll get to those numbers in a minute as well. But they're basically based on a percentage of your year-round housing stock as counted in the most recent decennial census. And then finally, the plan has to have a series of implementation strategies. And these are ones that I think are really important for us to explain. So if you go to the next slide, it would be really helpful. Oh, this is actually the goals from the last plan. I'm sorry. So there were goals in the last plan that I think are would be kind of recognizable to many of you. Preserving and diversifying year-round housing stock. We're still talking about this. Of course we are. Increasing affordability at all levels. I think that the town has been moving more toward that, but while still focusing on SHI eligible housing, but looking at kind of broader needs. Again, this plan will be doing the same thing. Tailoring development strategies to principles of the master plan, how timely it is to be having that conversation, and then engaging in outreach, education, and partnerships. So those sort of 4 big points were the main goals of the last plan, and the subordinate bullet points are simply kind of ideas to carry them out. Next slide, please. So the state requirements for implementation. There are state requirements, and then there are a lot of other things you can add if you choose. The state requirements are that you must identify zoning districts or areas in your community where the town will seek to modify your existing regulations to create housing that's eligible for the subsidized housing inventory. So that involves looking at your zoning and saying, well, where in our zoning scheme could we make changes to encourage housing that would be affordable to households at or below 80% of median. So that's one requirement. Another is to identify sites where the town might encourage Chapter 40B comprehensive permit applications. A third is identifying preferred housing characteristics in proposed residential developments. What kind of housing do you want to see? Identifying town-owned parcels for which the town will commit to issuing requests for proposals for SHI eligible housing, and then participating in some kind of regional collaboration addressing affordable housing needs. So those kind of 5 bullet points all have to be addressed in the plan. You can then address almost anything else that you wish, as we did in the last plan and the previous plan before that. There are sort of the state requirements, and then there are things that are also very important to Nantucket. Next slide, please. So the local approval process, for those of you who were involved last time, you'll probably remember this, new people. There's a 2-step approval process locally. The planning board and the select board both have to adopt the plan or approve it. And then the town manager transmits a letter to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities with the plan attached saying the select board and planning board, per the regulations, have approved this plan. They approved it on such and such a date. This is our proposed new housing production plan and a request for the state to approve it. And so that just sort of is a cover letter with the plan attached to it. It goes off to EOHLC, and you hope that it will be approved. And it was approved pretty quickly last time and the time before. So we have managed in the past plans to address all of those strategy requirements. And I have no doubt that, we'll be able to do that again. Once the plan is approved, if you reach one of those numeric goals that I referred to earlier, then you become eligible to request what's called housing plan certification. And that is the tool that then allows a zoning board of appeals to deny a comprehensive permit for a project, if it wishes to deny, for either 1 or 2 years, depending upon the duration of the certification that you've received. If you want to go to the next slide, I think we may have those numbers up in here. Sorry. Yeah, just as a reminder to all of you, this last plan was adopted in April 2021, the one that's expiring soon. The previous plan, the select board adopted in September 2016, and the planning board adopted in 2016. So there's a history here of the boards working collaboratively to get this done. Much of this, of course, predating the extent of the housing department that you have today. Next slide, please. So once you approve the plan, then it can be submitted to the state, as I said. When you qualify for certification, then you submit a second request, which is to say, would you please certify our plan for 1 or 2 years? If you produce at least 31 new subsidized housing inventory eligible units in a year, then you can request a 1-year certification. If you create at least 62 new units that are SHI eligible, you're eligible for 2-year certification. And you've hit these targets before. It's why the town has been certified more than once, at least in the whole time I've been working with you. It's been pretty consistent. Certification, as I said, enables the ZBA to deny a comprehensive permit if it wishes to. It doesn't have to deny, but it can. And its decision will not be overturned by the Housing Appeals Committee. Next slide, please. So this is just your current numbers, which I'm sure you've seen, because I know the housing department likes to let people know just how successful the town has been at working toward this difficult goal. So right now you have 512 units on the subsidized housing inventory. That is a big jump from where we started 10 years ago. There's a projection of 594 units by 2028. You need 618 units to reach that magical 10% number under Chapter 40B. Next slide, please. There's been quite a bit of outreach, mainly because of Tony and Dylan's efforts. There were interviews with various stakeholders and advocates going back to December on into February. It was over a few months that a number of interviews were done. There have been 2 community meetings so far, one on March 10th, the second one on June 1st. Tony and Dylan both did tabling days where we would basically set up a table near a local store or the post office or bank with information about the housing production plan and asking people for, comments on concerns they have about housing needs in Nantucket. But of course, those tabling activities also got the word out that this planning process has been underway. The housing office is sort of pushing now for final participation in that survey, which we need to close so we can move on with the project. But there is still a survey out there. And then, the general impression that we get is that there seems to be almost a reduced sense of urgency about housing, based on my experience with previous plans, or it could just be a case of housing fatigue. I think people probably do get tired of talking about housing a lot in some communities, especially where there's been so much discussion about it. So I can't say the involvement this time has been as extensive as it is in the past, but it certainly isn't the fault of the housing department or Tony. There's been a lot of outreach done. Next slide, please. What we're hearing at the sort of workshops and survey and so forth is people are very concerned about workforce and employee housing. I don't think this is any surprise to members of the select board. There is an interest in looking at how do we address needs of a broader range of incomes beyond the incomes that are SHI eligible. That discussion also went on 5 years ago. I think a more intense focus on year-round stability now than perhaps I heard before. An interest in kind of long-term community building and partnerships, people working together better around housing, addressing housing challenges. And also being mindful of the fact that it's an island and environmental protection is very important to everybody. Understanding, I think, is out there that people know the town has made significant effort to create affordable housing. Recognition of the sort of key impediments to housing production, to affordable housing production, barriers to construction. It's just difficult to build on Nantucket, zoning impediments, and then just limited buildable land. Next slide, please. Difficult to develop, especially for small scale projects, requiring some form of subsidy just to make these projects pencil out. Rising construction costs, although I know it's very dramatic in Nantucket, frankly, we hear this everywhere we work, that it is just a real impediment for builders to be able to create housing at scale and housing that's affordable. Understanding that there's a certain amount of stewardship and maintenance involved in protecting the affordable units, and people being a little concerned about whether the capacity exists to do all that. Recognition that affordable housing, even when well monitored and managed, is kind of vulnerable to loss in a high cost, very hot market like yours. People understanding that affordable housing plays a central role in community stability, essential for supporting vulnerable residents, and is a matter of basic social fairness, is a responsibility of every community. Next slide, please. So we had asked the planning board these questions, and we just kind of want to throw them out to the select board as well. Because we're still talking about this plan and its final contents. What you think perhaps the priorities of the plan should be from your point of view? What role should planning and zoning play in increasing the supply of housing in Nantucket? How should the town address overcrowded housing? And what do you want the next housing production plan to say about Nantucket's accomplishments between 2026 and 2031? So those are our questions for you. If you want to take that slide down, if we can actually see each other, it would probably be a good idea. Yeah, that's the schedule. We can get back to that. What say ye?
Yeah. Hi, Judy. Thank you. Here we are again. So I think we've invested a lot. The taxpayers have approved a lot of investment, and I think it is increasingly frustrating that those funds just don't go as far as we would like them to go.
Yep.
I do think that in terms of zoning changes, I feel as though Nantucket has had probably maybe one of the most flexible and permissive zoning bylaws in the Commonwealth with regard to unit creation in a lot of ways, right? With our secondary dwelling and tertiary dwelling bylaws, but they weren't focused strictly on year-round or restricted to year-round housing. So we've seen what worked as sort of naturally creating housing and secondary units and the market changing so much and those becoming, multi-dwelling compounds rather than, a main house with a year-round or living in a cottage, which was sort of how it was envisioned initially. So I do think we have some opportunities in zoning, but maybe not at the 80% below, but certainly in the workforce housing area, our double covenant lot program, I think there's some tweaks there that could be done. And I get it. It's exhausting. The problem it's getting more frustrating and we're feeling it more. And the rest of the world is catching up to the pain we've been feeling here for a very long time. So I'm not sure I'm really answering your questions, but I feel good about what we're doing, and I do think we need to stay our first priority has to be staying in safe harbor and getting us to 10% because I think the community spoke to us in 2019 after the Surfside Crossing application came across and we were not in safe harbor. And I took that. I wasn't on the board at the time, but since I've been on the board, I took that as a priority that I continue to think about and think we should focus on. And then and we've taken advantage of that rental exception, and all the rental projects we've done where all the units have counted on the SHI list are at multi-income levels, and that's been a priority. I think we should continue to do that, and using that sort of rental carve out is a huge advantage to achieve two goals simultaneously: staying in safe harbor and providing multi-level AMI units within a development. It's also, I think, really good to have, diverse family economics within a living situation. So I don't know. I'm babbling a little bit, but hopefully that's helpful input.
I agree with most of what you said. I do think that it would be great to have more tools for home ownership because I think that pride of home ownership creates longevity of people wanting to stay on the island. I feel a lot of people leave because they want out of a rental situation and they want something that they have, pride of, this is mine. permanently, even if it's restricted, which is kind of where we're at this point with where incomes have risen to and the outside pressures of us being such a popular travel destination and summer residence destination. So, I mean, I do feel like the Covenant program has been wildly successful. I'm worried that there may need to be some tweaks done to it because the cost of construction has outpaced where the maximum sales price is. So that's just something that I'd like us to look at further. That's what I have for right now.
I had one big question, which is when do the SHI numbers change on us? Because that's really ties into how much money we've already spent. And I think we're deployed about $180 million, or we're expected to deploy that in maybe the next 2 years, if that seems right, Dylan. And so then how much are we going to have to spend to keep up with SHI if SHI becomes really, let's say, call it the governing authority of the housing production plan? Like, is there a point where SHI is not going to be that kind of governing principle?
Well, it's a good question through you, Madam Chair. So the numbers we set on the decennial census, so it would be 2030. And then I believe that the numbers actually come out 2031. It's what we talk about in the housing department is that it's kind of hard to predict how the new numbers could impact. Like that 10% threshold could go up or could go down. And so I know this is not the most satisfying answer, and I jumped in front of Christy before she could get up here. She might want to add to what I'm saying, but you know, Judy and Tony might want to add too. But part of the framework is to encourage, to continue to encourage the creation of housing, and so that is something that we have to grapple with there.
I think one of the tough policy challenges is simply that there is definitely an interest and a need to focus on to put more focus on homeownership in Nantucket. Those units don't accrue as quickly to your SHI count as rental units do. Because in a homeownership development, only the affordable units will count. So if you have a mixed income development, the market rate units don't count, but they do count if it's a rental development. So there's that policy tug, I think, of like, how do you balance trying to meet the town's needs and also trying to recognize that part of the town's needs are met by making sure that the subsidized housing inventory doesn't create the kinds of problems for you that I think it sometimes causes in other communities in terms of just overdevelopment. So there's a struggle there.
Christy?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just to kind of touch on that. Again, one of the focuses has been that we focused on adding rentals. And when the trust is looking at properties, and you can do this as a cost comparison as well, over at Sparks Ave, we were able to add 32 units to our SHI list for investment of about $3.1 million. Whereas Wade Drive, Habitat for Humanity is doing home ownership, and that was a $4 million investment for 6 units. So we definitely want to increase the home ownership, but that is extremely expensive. And so we're trying to do as much as we can with the dollars that we have and maintaining multiple levels of affordability. So that's just one thing to keep in mind as we're trying to expand.
Jill?
Just on that, sorry, and also to clarify a smaller point, when we keep building, we keep having to add numbers, right? So if we have to add 31 units every year, does that really mean we need to add 34 units? I just want to confirm that. So for the 516 units we have, we actually have to go up 10%.
So this is actually a really good question. It comes up a lot. If we're building to maintain to the SHI list, then we're adding to our year-round housing stock, which is then adding to the census. It's inevitable that that may happen. On the other side, we are seeing single-family homes convert from year-round to seasonal use. So it's always a juggle of how much are we building more than the market is providing as the turnover. So it's hard to predict which way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the pain of that is that the benefit, right, of creating a year-round unit and offsetting it with the loss of a year-round unit is that we've lost a year-round unit, right? So it is, Chapter 40B is Chapter 40B. It's, it is something, however, I think, Judy, another thought I had is that, opportunities created under the seasonal communities law, there may be some room there for some tweaks to Chapter 40B to address the weird impacts on seasonal communities like ours of the 40B law. And so there are conversations happening with our state representatives around, are there things we can insert in the seasonal communities that minimize the negative impacts of 40B while we're trying to solve the problem of creating stable housing for the year-round community. And it is frustrating. And when we look at the cost of getting an 80%, I mean, I'm just going to give rough numbers, and Christy can correct me, but an 80% AMI home ownership unit sells in the $200,000 range today, right? Affordable to someone. It costs $1 million to build that now, if you put land cost and construction costs or more, right? So you're talking about an enormous subsidy to get one unit. So I believe that we should focus on rental units at the more affordable levels, perhaps, and maybe home ownership at more of the workforce level, because practically speaking, the subsidy required per unit will be less that way. Again, we have dollars and we have to figure out how to spend those dollars across the system. So.
Yeah.
I'll make one of the things that when I think about is we may have to discuss second homes. It's sort of it's been this unwritten thing. You can do whatever you want with your second home. The goal originally, the second home was to provide money so someone could live here year round, by having their mom or their grandmother or somebody there, or for them to rent it out part-time year round. That it is not that any longer. And so if we're going to say, okay, we can take homes off the market, the market's going to do what the market's going to do, but we're going to have to replace them and spend $1 million or $1.5 million per home and subsidize that in some manner, then we're never going to win. And so I think there's ways to use zoning and use incentives. We have to be smart about it, but how can we put in incentives so that people can get extra building if all the homes on the lot or in the area are year round, or et cetera, et cetera. There's got to be things that we can do that would help us do this cost effectively. Right now we're sort of subsidizing some of the things we don't want. And so that's one thing. The other question that was on there that I think about a lot is, what do we do about, illegal units or crowded units or whatever? I think we focus on safety. I don't think we focus on how many people are there. Maybe we focus on how many cars, but that's a different issue. But I don't think we focus on, I think they should be safe. They should have working smoke detectors and 2 exits, and they shouldn't be up in attics and down in cellars. But short of that, I think we've got to be really careful. And it's always been like that. My family in the summer would move out into a cottage, and there was, 5, 6 of us in a tiny 1-bedroom, for 3 or 4 months. It was, we were lucky. It was on the beach. It was nice, but it still wasn't great. And so we've always we lived above the jetties and used the commercial kitchen, which is illegal to do now. But so people have always made a go of it here by doing what people are doing now. And I don't think we should be looking down on that. That's kind of what we've always done. Let's just make sure the houses are safe. So those are a couple things. Oh, and the other thing is just, instead of the money, like when we're doing a lot of these big developments, when you actually look at the spreadsheets and look at the numbers, sort of there's $5, $6, $7 million going to the developers when the development is done. and then they have an income stream every year after. Well, I would like to think that we can increase the capacity, the ability and the capacity of the housing people here, so that money is coming back to the housing groups here, and that we're able to do that ourselves, or at least co-general partner with some of these people and learn this business, because it's not going away. And I think that there's got to be a way that we can do this more cost effectively if we are partnered or doing it ourselves. Thank you.
I just realized I'm chairing. Go ahead.
Sorry. Through you, can I ask Matt another question about that? What do you mean that we're subsidizing things that we don't want to subsidize? That was sort of a broad statement. Sorry.
Yeah. How do I explain it? We're how do we're allowed, by not going, like, initially what we did with second homes was, and it's written right in there, was a valid reason for the second homes. And it was actually to sort of address the issues that are much more severe now, but we have allowed that to go away and become something different. And because of that to me is that was a change of policy. And it was a change of policy that has been very, sort of successful for certain industries and for building and certain things, but it is now coming at a cost that we are all having to pay. We've had to put millions of dollars toward, affordable housing. If a lot goes up for sale, it's, any of these large lots that we think of as islander neighborhoods, those lots get snapped up, 2 million, 2.5, 3 million, they're gone, because they can have a big pool and they can be, a main home, and they can be the package. And I think that, we have to look at that and say, okay, are there ways that we can impact that in a better direction? Can we say, okay, you can have 3 dwellings or 4 small dwellings here, and if they're all year round, and maybe we won't lose some of them as quickly as we're losing them. Anyway, so, I've talked about it before. So I think it's more in our policies are leading to bad examples that then are costing us a lot of money. That's what I mean by it.
Don's back, but
Okay.
Bobby looks like he wants to say something to me, so.
I was just waiting for everybody to finish. Uh-oh. Is it me or you? Feedback. Oh, it's Matt.
Up here.
The big problem here, there's a couple things. We started this way too late. We were 25 years late. If we had done this back when we first put the land bank in place and we gave the land bank $30 million to go out and snatch up as much land as we can, they could. If we put $30 million into housing, we wouldn't have this problem right now. That's the reality of it. But we're chasing it. My concern is that we're so worried about this shy list and getting to this safe 10% so that we don't have to worry about a 40B, that we're jamming everyone into the middle of the island like a bunch of sardines in a can. And I think we need to not worry so much about the 40B itself as to the infrastructure that it's creating. I mean, the traffic in this part of the island right now is immense in February, not just in August. And my big concern now is we're building the ADUs. Is it 8? Did I get it right? Oh, good. Thought my dyslexia was kicking in there for a minute. We're building ADUs, but if they're within a mile of a bus stop, they don't need a parking space. And we're jamming 3 or 4 of these things on a small lot with no parking. And now cars are parking on the streets that never had cars parked on them. I think we need to look at it a little more broader and maybe move some of this stuff out of the center of the island to the outlying areas more. And Matt, maybe you're onto something. If somebody wants to build a house and a guest house, we say to them, well, you can do that, but you got to build a small ADU that's has to be rented year round. And, I don't know if we have the ability to do something like that, but we need to kind of start looking a little bit outside the box.
I think I think we need to look at the secondary dwelling bylaw, and now that the ADU thing has been imposed upon us by the state, right, out of our control, what do we do? You know, we did make the zoning changes at annual town meeting to prevent 4 units, right, on a lot. But do we want to think about revising the and when you say second homes, Matt, I'm assuming you're saying secondary dwellings, the secondary dwelling bylaw, just to be clear. Okay. So, and then the other thing I think we need to work on, and I know the planning board is interested in this, is this comprehensive conversation around zoning, but also at some point creating a playbook of sorts for property owners, people who are either already own property or are thinking about acquiring a lot, like, and give them the list of incentives that make doing more year-round housing more financially viable. And then you know, we've put the housing near transportation infrastructure, right? I mean, there was a strategy behind that, in the hope that people would use public transportation or not have as many vehicle trips. If we start putting homes in Pulpus or in Nantucket, or, you know, that guarantees somebody's in a car. So that's the trade-off. I'm not saying one way or the other, but there's a trade-off there, right, in terms of policy or focus. And generally speaking, you know, Nat's talked about Chuck Mahone, who came and talked that, you know, building infrastructure out is actually more expensive to maintain and control over time on the infrastructure part. So these are conversations we need to have around the diversifying where or broadening where housing is created. But I do think a change to the secondary bylaw and the double covenant bylaw would potentially incentivize housing in other areas of the island in a new way, year-round housing.
Jill?
Yeah, I mean, I brought up the shy issue because I feel like it is sort of a constraint in some ways. And I'm definitely open to that not being your guiding light, you know, in perpetuity, because I don't, you've done amazing things and you're getting very close, and I would never suggest that you shouldn't, but I do think that looking to kind of push things out, if you're talking about homeownership being a priority, then I think you have to consider that homeownership is going to move further afield, regardless of what those consequences are.
Thank you. Penny Dye, Vice Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Just quickly, I want to remind people that first $25 million that was voted for affordable housing at town meeting had a dual purpose. It was to keep us within safety of the shy list. And so that has been a focused tenet when the Affordable Housing Trust is making decisions. Secondly, the last decennial census was in 2020, the year the pandemic started here. And we went from 4,200, I think it was, year-round residences to 6,190 because so many people moved here during the pandemic. Okay. It is highly likely by 2030 that could drop. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And additionally, yeah, building in the outlying areas has never been, first of all, there are ground coverage issues, there's septic issues there. And again, the cost, tend to be a lot of wetlands issues as well. Yep. So thank you.
When I say build in the outlying areas, what I'm saying is that we look at the possibility of somebody buys a lot in Tom Nevers, a big lot, not a little postage stamp lot, and they want to build a house in a secondary dwelling. We somehow incentivize them to build an ADU there on that property that they can then rent out to someone else. Because I believe that the ADUs are going to be they're a big part of our solution. Instead of building gigantic buildings like this next door, we can only build so many of those around the island, but we can build little ADUs all over the place. And we need to figure out a way to incentivize our summer residents and our guests who use their houses for 1 or 2 months a year. Build one for your caretaker, and then your caretaker has a place to live, and where he's living now, somebody else can live. So, that's what I meant when I said building the out. I'm not suggesting we build that in Tom Nevers, but
Understood. If I could respond, I would like to see the town taking some sort of a leadership role on helping people, not only, as Brooke said, understand what's possible on their property, but perhaps relieving the financial burden for those to create ADUs that are restricted to year-round occupancy. Lastly, I want to say, when zoning started here, everybody, unless you were in a property that was deed restricted in a development, had the right for primary and a secondary dwelling. And in fact, when that started in 1972, we were actually calling them in-law apartments. So it's exactly what Matt said. That has changed now with the amount of wealth that has come in here, which is basically what is causing this problem. We are competing with the 1% of the 1% in this world because of the popularity of this island, because we've done things well. We've preserved the land, we've preserved the history. Our water is still good. And that is the challenge. And the other thing is, here our population, when I moved here, there were 3,500 people living here. I've been here 50 years now. Call it 20,000 now. Why are these people here? They're here because the jobs are here. Why are the jobs here? Because they're taking care of these massive properties. So it's all connected and it's complicated. And I wish the political will had been here 30 or 40 years ago, because we would not be in this situation. It is exponentially more difficult today. Thank you.
Just a comment. We bought the lot that we're sitting on for largely for housing. The designs of fairgrounds, the designs that were presented had, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it had 150, 200 homes with some focal points for town buildings, but it was largely for housing. That we went to a work group and it kind of went away, but we had the foresight back then when we bought this property, and it just never kind of got off the ground. The other part, I think the town and country from the comp plan was done for a reason. The problem is we have town areas now that we're developing like suburbs, and they have feeder roads and they don't have connections and they don't have sidewalks, and there's no design to park the right amount of cars there. So that's why it's just so terrible. We don't like it. It doesn't work. And because we haven't designed it well, we look at everything as one lot, one thing. We don't look at the total. And I think, we've got to start from a planning perspective, like Bobby's right. We've got to look at the big picture and try to and figure it out, because you could downtown is very dense and it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, but we aren't replicating downtown. We're replicating, sort of, I'll make fun of my own place, but we're replicating, suburban settings. And so I think that we could put more density in, make it so people aren't as, can walk and bike and hop on the bus. We could find ways to add, to make the island actually nicer and work better. If we looked at everything, sorry, last one. Sorry. If we looked at everything from North Liberty Street to the airport as that's an urban area, and start building it as an urban area. We're going to talk about, a place near Hinsdale tonight that should be connected. And so anyway, I just think that the density isn't the issue. It's how we're doing it. It's how we're building it. So thank you.
Hi, good evening, Campbell Sutton. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things, and I could be wrong here, but it's my understanding that ADUs cannot be restricted in any way. So, and I might also get this a little bit off, but I thought what we were trying to do was to utilize the ADU as the secondary unit and then make a tertiary unit restricted, right? So that a third, I think that's sort of the push in what we passed at town meeting last year. The other thing is, I think one of the issues with these roads that we're running into is we keep approving these, like they could be a rear lot subdivision, they could be a subdivision, and they're all getting this rural road designation. So they don't need sidewalks, they don't need lights, they don't need storm drainage. And I think, at the moment, I'm sure Appleton Road was like that, right? And it probably seemed like a good idea then. But years later, as the development is pushing out, no effort is made to bring the roads into compliance with the demand on those roads. And that gives us pretty poor, well, we all experience it, so whatever. The other thing is, and I thought we passed this at town meeting, where if you're doing, let's say, in this case, a rear lot subdivision, you want to do divide it into 3 lots, right? Tertiary, 3 lots. That it's now stated that you could be asked to restrict one of those lots to either year-round or affordable. I believe we passed that. It changes because we never had that before. It would be nice if you could change, could to will, but one step at a time. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to throw out there. Thank you.
It is unfortunate that we didn't move housing forward sooner. I mean, Aspen made a lot bigger strides than we have a lot sooner. But I will say the political will has been very challenging. The property here, I believe it sat for a decade before we even started talking about housing, which was when I was first on the board, which was in 2015.
We talked about it before then, and
Yeah.
the neighbors fought it tooth and nail, and it's never been a
Didn't move it forward. We didn't issue the real RFP, I think, until 17.
it's never been a popular thing.
And then the neighbors sued.
Not just, it doesn't matter, just housing in general. It'll work itself out. That was kind of the reality is it had to get to critical mass before we started to do something about it. We've done a great job to this point, and I don't know if we're always going to be chasing the horse's tail, so to speak, on this. But I think we're going to get to the point, just because we have so little land left, that we're going to have to get creative, even more creative than what we've already gotten creative about. So I personally, one of the things that I would like to really see in this next 5 years is more of a push for workforce housing and less of a push for affordable housing, because without the workforce housing, we're not going to have teachers, we're not going to have firemen, we're not going to have doctors, we're not going to have nurses. And that's really the 250% number for me is a key number, because that allows someone who wants to be here, who's a professional, to be able to maybe afford a house here. So that's where I would like to see us really focus on in this next plan.
I agree. It is the higher income levels that we can focus home ownership on potentially. But just one more thing, because Bobby interrupted me.
Chair should do a better job of controlling him.
To keep a handle on this meeting. But the other point that was brought up, like, Matt, look how wide Main Street is and how you can park on it. And some of the really good examples of how we've kind of embraced actually doing the road improvements, like First Way, everyone was against it. Now it has a sidewalk and it's paved and it's a great road. And then putting parking on Pleasant Street next to Stop and Shop was an absolutely huge move, and that should be done a lot of places. When it went in on Vesper Lane, huge improvement next to the hospital. So we've got to all sort of embrace some levels of change. And when those changes do happen and you see some of these positive examples, maybe people can think towards those. Christy?
Thank you. And I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to review this. It's really important that we use this as our roadmap in the Housing Department and the Affordable Housing Trust. And I just wanted to key on one thing. I don't want to steal Judy's thunder on this because she brings it up to us almost daily, is the need at that low and moderate income. And I hear the board and I hear you, Bobby, that we want workforce housing, but we just had a lottery last month for units at the 80% AMI and at the 175% AMI. And there were 61 units, or 61 applicants at the 80% AMI and only 6 applicants. So I'm not saying that the 6 don't also need housing, but we are seeing a lot of municipal employees actually fall in that 150% or below. So I don't want to lose track. And we, of course, want to go up to the 250 and serve families that all ranges, because that's what we need to do on Nantucket now. But I just really want to key in that there is still significant need at the 80% AMI and below. So I just wanted to end with that note, and thank you for that time. And I can let others talk now too.
Should we go over the schedule though, Christy, before you wrap up? Of course, I can't see everybody in the room, so maybe I just interrupted someone I didn't mean to.
Oh, sorry. I have one hand raised. Let me just go to Mary Longacre online.
Hi, and thank you to Christy for emphasizing that there are more people at the 80% to 150 or 75% level. I attended a presentation on housing last year, and I was shocked to find out that with a good job and my own home, I still would fall into a category of low income. I think that we don't realize what that really means. It doesn't mean what it means, out in America. It means a lot of people on Nantucket, because those numbers for the AMI are so high, and for the housing need is so high. So I would just encourage Christy to, come back if you have to, but put those numbers up on the screen and let people see what qualifies as a low income in a certain bracket. It's just astounding to me. I never thought of myself as being, in that description, but I am. So just a little clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah,
Penny?
again, Penny died. Just very quickly, a household can earn up to almost $400,000 a year and qualify for subsidized housing on this island. I want to just quickly mention, and this is regarding the potential for future ownership. There is now a community land trust here on Nantucket. It's a private nonprofit. The land trust model is that the land trust owns the land, and then the owner does it it's a leasehold interest, 99-year renewable lease, modest fee. They can build, they can move a house onto it. This is the only way we are going to increase ownership on this island, is by market intervention. It's not going to happen any other way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Judy, what are the next steps?
So we wanted to come and make sure everybody is prepared or is aware that we're working on this project for the housing office, and aware of the schedule as well. We have submitted to the housing office this week a full draft of the plan for local review. So it's out there, should be out there shortly. We're going to be back to you folks in August to ask you to approve the plan. We're going to see the planning board on August 10th. So we're going to them ahead of you, which is typically the way it's done. So I would encourage all of you, as soon as you can get the draft plan, to take a look at it. I'm sure there are going to be some changes to it before we come back to you, but the current plan expires at the end of September. So I think the housing office wants to get the plan filed with the Commonwealth by the end of August. So that is the schedule that we're working on. There is one thing I want to just point out, that's food for thought for all of you. Since I've been working with the town for quite a while now, there's a lot of interest, and it's good interest in the program that exists out in Vail, Colorado, for purchasing restrictions, year-round restrictions on existing housing. And I know there's been some bumps trying to get that program off the road, off the ground, but people are certainly working on it. What I have not heard in Nantucket, and I think you're going to hear about it in the housing plan, is that Vail has a lot more going on than the purchase of deed restriction program. They also have a form of inclusionary zoning that requires every single development that takes place in Vail must provide 10% of the gross floor area for worker housing. And so there's an opportunity to pay a fee instead of creating the actual space. But everything in Vail must provide a contribution, a mitigation, if you will, for employee housing. Not income restricted, but worker housing. So it's the same kind of model that you've been talking about for your year-round restriction program to be purchased, is not really entirely income-based as much as it is having to be a year-round resident. That is the other piece of the Vail program that I haven't really heard discussed in Nantucket, but I think you're going to hear about it in the housing plan, because you kind of need to pull out all the stops in Nantucket to get things turned around to accomplish the things that you're talking about. And regulation, zoning regulations, I think have not been looked at enough. So you're going to hear more about that. I just want to give that as a primer. Be that as it may, we're going to be back with you next month, hoping to secure the board's vote, or, I'm sure for the housing office wanting to secure the board's vote to submit the plan to EOHLC. So that's our schedule that we're working.
Matt has a quick question.
Quick question, Judy. Is
Yeah.
that is that inclusionary for just commercial buildings?
It's
or is it
everything.
Any building. So if someone builds a
Everything.
huge mansion, they have
Everything.
to. Oh, okay. Thank you.
10% of gross floor area. It's essentially recognizing that all development has a mitigation obligation to make sure that there's housing for people who work in the community.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll see you next month.
Yes, thank you so much. It's good to see all of you again.
You too. Thank you.
Yep, take care. Bye.
Next up, we have the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Two requests. A, request for an amendment of a declaration of trust for Affordable Housing Trust Fund to increase the limit of area median income to 250%. And then B is going to be a review of the Wiggles Way housing project audit.
All right.
Start with A.
Yeah. Speaking of housing fatigue, Dylan Metchenpel, the Deputy Housing Director. So as the Madam Chair said, we're asking you to authorize and execute the Third Amendment of the Declaration of Trust, which the Affordable Housing Trust voted in support of at their July 7th meeting. Importantly, this amendment brings the Declaration of Trust in line with seasonal communities. So this will officially allow us to serve up to 250% area median income, up from 240%. And it also formally allows us to acquire year-round occupancy deed restrictions.
Okay, move approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in
Can I-
favor?
Aye.
Can I ask a question after? I'm in favor of this, so it's fine.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0.
Question about if we, by some hope, get to have a municipal preference for people through the trust somehow, if that through seasonal communities, or if there's a way to do that through the trust, would that limit anybody who comes to the trust would be limited to the 250, which we saw tonight was a very generous amount of money. I'm not saying it's not, but.
So the short answer to that question is yes, we're still sort of working with town council to understand what seasonal communities allows us to do in terms of year-round occupancy restrictions and whether or not those can be acquired without an affordability restriction. So right now we're operating under the assumption that they do require an affordability restriction, which would be up to 250%.
Okay.
But that's still sort of in the works with the OHLC.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then B is Christy.
You, Christy Ferrantella, the Municipal Housing Director. Just want to thank you guys. The Affordable Housing Trust wanted to bring this report forward to the Select Board. Online, we have Hillary and Diane from the firm CBiz. To give a little bit of context for this agenda item, 31 Fairgrounds Road, known as Wiggles Way, was a development proposed in 2020 as a 22-unit year-round affordable rental housing development. Housing Nantucket served as the developer, while the Affordable Housing Trust provided funding for land acquisition and construction through grants and long-term financing. Throughout the construction of the project, the project underwent 6 change orders, and in December of 2024, when the select board approved one of the last funding requests, the last funding request, you requested an independent review to be conducted following the completion of the development. The Affordable Housing Trust retained CBIZ Risk and Advisory Services to evaluate the project's administration, financial transactions, construction oversight, and project management. And what we were really looking for in this report was to identify opportunities to strengthen future affordable housing developments and how the Affordable Housing Trust can work with our partners in the future. One of the most important things that came out of this project that I just don't want to lose sight of in this discussion is that we have 22 year-round households with access to stable and affordable housing on Nantucket. And as I just mentioned during the housing production plan, the significant need for numbers in this lottery, which this was the rental, not homeownership, there was 6 units at 80% of AMI, 80% of AMI, and 197 households applied for those. All of them were locally employed. So I just wanted to make that aware that this project helped contribute to our safe harbor and has brought these units online for our households in our community. And with that, I'm going to hand it over through you, Dawn, to Hillary and Diane to walk us through an overview of the audit, and then they can answer any questions from the board.
Thank you. Go ahead, Hillary and Diane.
Thank you. My name is Hillary Johnson, and with me is Diane Morrison. As Christy mentioned, we're both from CBIZ, the Risk Advisory Group. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present tonight. So this will be a little bit repetitive of what Christy said, but I'll just start off by giving you guys a little bit of background on the approach and the objective that we took. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane, and she'll go over the recommendations that we made in the report. And so, as Christy mentioned, our objective was really just to review and assess the management of the financial transactions and oversight of this project. And so to achieve that objective, we reviewed a number of documents, including the initial land development agreement that was signed back in February of 2021. We also looked at the change order requests, board meeting minutes. We also looked at vendor invoices that were paid by Fairgrounds Common, the builder, Stevens & Co., who served as the builder at the end, and also Housing Nantucket. And that was over the course of the entire project. So as Christy pointed out, this project was a partnership between Housing Nantucket and the town's Affordable Housing Trust. Housing Nantucket did serve as the developer and was responsible for managing the construction. Once that project was complete, Housing Nantucket became the project owner and receives the future revenues to support the development's ongoing operations. The trust's role was to provide the funding for the land purchase and construction of the units. And this funding was obtained through a combination of grants, loans, mortgages, and all of that funding information is outlined in the background of our report. So the initial agreement that was signed in February was between Fairgrounds Common and Housing Nantucket. And that did include the initial land purchase of about $3.6 million. And it had a fixed fee construction cost total of about $10.3 million. The payments to Fairground Common were made in 9 installments that were tied to specific milestones. The first payment was made at closing, and that was for the design and development costs. Over the course of the project, as Christy mentioned, there were 6 change orders, and we have outlined those change orders and how those change orders were funded on pages 3 and 4 of our report. The first change order was probably one of the most significant one, and that was the one that modified the project design from 5 buildings to 8, and also increased the square footage from 18,000 to 20,000. One of the things to keep in mind as you've either read the report or here are our recommendations, this project was structured as a fixed fee agreement. So the builder was not required to provide vendor or subcontractor invoices before being reimbursed to Housing Nantucket. We did obtain those, and also beginning in change order 5, which occurred in April of 2024, Housing Nantucket did begin requesting that Fairgrounds Common provide those vendor supports to them as well. As you guys are probably aware, in November of 2024, the construction responsibilities were transferred from Fairgrounds Common to Stevens & Co. Now, this agreement was completed under a more cost plus fee arrangement rather than the fixed fee that was with Fairgrounds Common. And under that agreement, it did require Stevens & Co. to provide documentation to substantiate the actual costs that were billed to Housing Nantucket. So there was a couple of different fee structures that we had to look through as we looked through these invoices. And we've made some recommendations based on that information. To make those recommendations, we did meet with a number of personnel from the Trust, Housing Nantucket. We met with Trust board members. We also met with the builder, Billy Cassidy. We reviewed funding agreements, contracts, change orders, and relevant minutes from the Housing Nantucket and the Select Board and the Housing Trust. We also did review all of the invoices that were provided to us by Fairgrounds Common. And then we also received Stevens & Co. and invoices from Housing Nantucket to demonstrate the project's construction costs. And our review of those invoices did focus just on ensuring that they were project costs directly related to this project build. As Christy mentioned as well, our recommendations are focused on how the town and its partners can strengthen the way future construction projects are managed, whether those projects are fixed fee or a guaranteed maximum price arrangement. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane, and she's going to walk you through our recommendations.
Thanks, Hillary. So we had an overall 4 different observations or recommendations of how the trust can better protect the taxpayer or other grant funding to get better visibility into the costs related to individual projects. The first one would be to go out to bid, to go through an RFP process. We do understand that being on Nantucket is a lot more difficult and challenging to get contractors to bid just for logistics. So if the bidding process is not feasible due to the responses gathered, I would say the best course of action would be getting a very detailed breakdown of how the cost was arrived. Getting a schedule of values that really details out each individual trade, each individual scope, as well as any sort of fee structure really gets a lot more visibility into what you are actually paying for. The next item, also we do recommend that the Housing Trust should consider requiring approval from the town to really hire their own outside project management firm. Steve Hollister was brought on board, not necessarily at the beginning of this project, but as the project was underway, acting as a representative for Housing Nantucket as an outside project management firm. We do recommend the trust employing one just to make sure that they are acting on the benefit or acting on behalf of the trust. The next item that we recommended going forward is that, as Hillary mentioned, this project was put together as a fixed fee, which means that it was basically a guaranteed price for all of the work that was completed. There is no visibility, and the contractor does not have to provide any backup of how they arrived at any of the cost. If there's no individual schedule values that is put up front where you have clear visibility, it puts a lot more risk on where these costs are going and how much markup has been put together. If you do continue to go through a fixed fee route, we have a couple of recommendations on how to lessen the risk if you choose to do a fixed fee. One would be to get full bid leveling sheets from not only the contractor themselves, but also subcontractors that he is working with. This allows you to choose the best and lowest price for that scope of work. We also recommended a lot more transparency and cost breakdown within change orders. So if you are doing a fixed fee, you don't really have a lot of visibility into the cost, but the change orders are where you're able to stop any risks that go through for cost overages. Change orders really should be itemized both by labor, so that's hours times rate, understanding the prevailing wage acts that are employed in Massachusetts. And then for any cost for materials or equipment, it should also be a unit cost by quantity. This way you're able to cross-reference whether invoices are submitted, or you can cross-reference with invoices and cost at a big box store that you're able to double check on yourselves. And then part of those change orders, either an architect or a design team really should be reviewing all of those change orders to make sure that there is no crossed coverage of change orders that are submitted that really should have been captured within base scope. This allows, again, another set of eyes to make sure that the town or the trust is not incurring additional costs that they should not be paying. The third item that we recommended for the trust is that we really, as far as best practices and industry standard go, we really do recommend doing a CMAR at risk or a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price project structure. This really allows for a lot of visibility into what you are actually paying for. With a CMAR at risk or a GMP project, all invoices need to be submitted before payment. This also allows you to see the actual cost for any insurances, any markups and fee that the contractor is getting, as well as all labor costs and labor hours. So you can see who is actually working on the project and making sure that they're paid a decent wage, but also making sure that you're not overpaying for any hourly rates for project management teams. This also in a CMAR at risk or a GMP project, if there is, for whatever reason, poor management of the project with the GMP, this allows or does entail that the contractor is at risk for mismanagement, which means that if he cannot get it done within that guaranteed maximum price and it does go over, that he is in charge or he is at risk of eating extra cost and it would go into his fee. That just means that he mismanaged the budget and he mismanaged his time. And so then this way you're not incurring extra costs. The last observation that we really had for the trust going forward is that there really should be on-site inspection of any project going forward. Whether you do a fixed fee, lump sum, GMP, CMR at risk, it really doesn't matter. There really should be a representative who is on-site who can say, and verify percent of completion, making sure that the material and material that's being used is in compliance with a lot of town ordinances or construction documents, and that any sort of stored material is properly stored, being before it goes and incorporated into the construction of the building. Hillary, back to you.
Thanks, Diane. That really wraps up the summary of our recommendations. I think you guys have seen a copy of the draft report. So with that, I'm not sure if Christy wants to speak or if I turn it back over to you, Chairperson.
Okay, questions?
I'd like, the report has been really valuable in terms of helping. This is the first project of its kind with a nonprofit partner on island, and it happened during an unprecedented, transition in construction costs, pandemic related construction costs. I think the value of this analysis is already being put to work. We have an OPM for Nantucket Road, for instance, already hired by the trust independently. And I think all of their recommendations are valid and valuable, and we'll be putting them to work. We already are putting them to work. And so I know this board requested this for that purpose primarily because things were feeling a little less in control maybe than we had hoped at the time. So I'm grateful for the advice.
I would agree. I mean, I would recommend that we move forward with the suggested best practices for all future projects.
So do we need a motion to accept the report and recommend that the housing department utilize the learnings from the report moving forward? I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have the Sconset Trust request for approval of a historic preservation restriction at 6 Broadway. This is the second time we've seen this, so we would be adopting it tonight.
Correct. You reviewed this, well, 3 of you reviewed this preliminarily at your April 29th meeting. The restriction was sent to town council for review and the issuance of a report, which is in your packets. And I would urge you to approve the historic preservation restriction for 6 Broadway. And as part of your motion, find it as being within the public, being in the public interest.
Questions? Motion?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, next up, we have real estate matters. Request to petition the county for the layout of Egan Lane.
Hi, good evening. Tracy McDonald, Real Estate Manager. So I am presenting something I haven't presented before. A request for a petition to lay out a portion of Egan Lane as a public roadway as shown on the layout plan that's attached to the petition you had in your packet. And I was hoping, Erica, maybe you could put the layout plan on the screen. I usually do a GIS, but I didn't do that this time. So back in December 2025, we came to the select board and Attorney Jesse Brescher made a brief presentation on the background of this proposed request and explained some of the history to arrive to this point, and which Jesse and the homeowners and the planning staff have collaborated on for years. The subdivision access was originally laid out as common driveway easements from Old South Road. So the proposal is to take those common driveway easements and essentially the town would take them back and lay out a public roadway, which would allow for a more traditional subdivision with a real road and all that goes with that. I just want to point out from this layout plan that the access is still from Old South. It remains private in a portion and then becomes public, sort of where you see that clear part outlined. So pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 80 in the Town Charter, the staff is recommending that the Select Board accept the letter of petition to lay out Egan Lane as a public way according to the plan, and then refer to the County Commissioners. I have Town Council Vicky Marsh, who prepared the petition, and she's online if you have questions about the process. And also Deputy Director of Planning, Meg Trudell, is also online. And I'm not sure if Attorney Jesse Brescher is. Oh. Oh, yes. Sorry about that.
Questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
It's, part of it's still gonna be private? The main entrance is still gonna be private, is that? So you gotta go through a private road to get to a public road. Are we gonna have to maintain this road once we take it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm-
Sorry, you got to come to.
I couldn't meet with you beforehand, so I'm sorry, Jess. I know, well, unless you wanted to come 30 miles east of here, I wasn't gonna be able to do it.
Would have. You didn't ask. So Jesse Brescher, so the short answer is no. The whole deal of this is that the town will take the an easement, but the homeowners remain.
HOA will take care of it.
Yeah, 100%
We don't have to plow
responsible.
or
No
anything.
plowing, no nothing,
That's
no
all
paving.
We're good.
Yep.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Motion to approve the taking? Is that?
No,
Nope.
nope, you're,
No
you're
taking.
approving. Maybe Vicky can lay it out a little bit better, but you're approving the
gonna-
petition.
Yeah, you are motioning to
No.
send a
Nope, let Vicky,
petition.
Vicky go for it.
Vicky?
Oh, maybe we've lost her.
What you're gonna
No.
motion is to send a petition to the county commissioners to lay out.
Sorry,
Egan
thank you
Way-
very much.
Egan Way as the private way.
This is a vote to approve. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's delayed, but yes.
Correct.
Okay, so what Erica just said, that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, anything further? All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
We'll see it again.
Yes.
Okay, town manager's report? Libby's online now. Am I going to her or to you? Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna go to me if that's okay. So, we have a presentation for you here, and we have begun a discussion with the board. Maybe a month ago, we started discussing with you the need to improve our capital improvement plan. And it needs to be a little more robust and prioritized and not so much subject to frequent change, which it sort of has been. We've had projects that have leapfrogged over others, projects that come in 1 year that have really haven't been discussed in depth earlier. So we need to be a lot more disciplined, we think, with our capital improvement plan. And especially since we approved so many capital projects at the 2026 annual town meeting that are, as we all know, quite costly. So Rick and Greg and I have been working with the departments to get you updated project lists for every department. Rick's going to take you through this reset idea, and we've mentioned to you before that this tonight is an overview of what we would like you to do, and you've already basically agreed, but this is a little bit more detail. We have a workshop scheduled for Thursday, August 13th at 5 o'clock, where we will have a lot more detailed discussion about specific projects with department heads. And then in September, TBD, don't have a date quite yet, you would readopt a capital improvement plan that would be intended to be the plan that we move forward from year to year. Obviously, there could be something that changes, but it would have to be something that has a lot of reason to change, that has justification for that. So Rick's going to take you through this, and we're happy to answer questions, but this is meant to be more of an overview tonight and not get into the specifics of individual projects. Rick.
Thanks, Libby. Rick Sears, Deputy Town Manager. So I think just to elaborate on what Libby just said to say, I think the number of projects and the cost of the projects in the SIP, in the capital improvement plan, which we're going to call SIP the rest of the night, is a little bit alarming and concerning. And I think when we pair that with sort of a lack of a central prioritization or logical sequencing of the projects, it becomes an even more concerning problem. So I don't want to take you through the SIP tonight. I just want to kind of lay the groundwork for the workshop that we're proposing to undertake and ultimately hopefully deliver a SIP that is a central planning document for you all that is prioritized and sequenced and financially cogent. And so in order to do that, I'm just going to want to take you to, hopefully this thing works. There we go. What we need to do to prep for all of that, or to introduce that and prep for it, is to talk about at a high level, what we've already approved. So I have from FY 2020 to FY 27, just for your review. So that's 8 years. And then what's in the next 10 years of the plan. But I'm just going over all this at a pretty high level. And then at the workshop, the goal will be to prioritize all the projects in the SIP if we possibly can. Those are the pages that I just handed out to you. Those are going to be your homework pages if I'm allowed to assign homework. And then work through the prioritization, hand it back to the staff. We'll go away and try and do some work on sequencing the projects and hopefully some financial planning around the projects, so to come up with what this might cost us each year on people's tax bills. And then together we would iterate our way to your 10-year SIP, which would be properly sequenced and financially sound. This is not very receptive. There we go. So why have a capital improvement plan? Just really quickly, one is best practice for Massachusetts municipalities, and it's also a requirement of our financial policies and procedures. But also, it should be the primary planning document for turning priorities into an executable plan. It helps align long-range planning with financial capacity, and it provides a transparent roadmap for actually delivering the projects. I think I've spent a lot of time in my 6 or 7 years here with the town on the SIP. It's hard work. It's hard to prioritize these projects. It's hard to sequence them, and it's hard to understand their financial impact. But it's our aspiration, the town manager and Greg and myself, that we accomplish all three of those things, and that we end up with a reliable SIP, a SIP that can be that is suitable for use by the select board, by town administration, by our bond council, by the rating agencies. So the SIP is actually, I mean, there are quite a few activities in support of the SIP, and I'm not going to spend much time on this, but it starts with the departments, and then the town manager reviews it, and then the Capcom reviews it, and they go through their process of roaring, as does the town manager. We all review the out-year capital projects. There's the Capcom report and recommendations, which is a very comprehensive document. FinCom reviews it, and of course the select board reviews it and approves it for warrant inclusion. So there's a lot of parties involved in this SIP. This just doesn't work. Go. Okay, I'll turn it over to you then. I'll tell you then. And it's a pretty heavy process. There probably are some things we can do to improve the SIP, which includes the town manager starting her review earlier, Capcom maybe starting a little later, lightening their process, simplifying the RORIs, possibly for consideration, eliminating the review of recurring annual items. There could also possibly simplify their report. It's a very comprehensive document, worthwhile, but labor intensive. Probably the most important thing is better synchronization of projects that are in the SIP between, say, select board projects, affordable housing trust projects, coastal resiliency, planning board. Take all those from independent submissions to a coordinated plan. We could also eliminate some non-capital items from the capital process. Those would be things like studies, modeling, and licensing, and possibly also annual things that I said, but putting a little bit more detail on that: road paving, cobblestones, new and replacement computers. Maybe we just take those things out of the approval process and get them into operating budgets. So that's just a little background on this, how the CIP is developed, Erica, if you wouldn't mind. So I'm going to switch gears here and talk about what we've approved in the last 8 years. So in the last 8 years, that's the visual. So you get a sense for what we did at the last town meeting relative to the previous years. The previous years average about $80 million a year, and at the last town meeting, so for town meeting of 26, annual fiscal year 2027, we approved over 250 million. So 3 times the average approved at our last meeting. Erica, if you could go to the next slide. Just a little finer point on that: $381 million approved in the last 3 town meetings. Erica, please. you can just skip that slide. That's just more detail on what we approved. So I just want to talk for 1 second. Is the last slide on the past year's approval. And it's a little bit tricky, so I don't want anybody to do any serious financial planning based on these numbers, but these are ballpark numbers, and I prefer to keep them as indicative. So the table represents the approximate tax impact of the FY20 through 27 approved capital projects on the average assessed year-round home with the residential exemption if the money was borrowed in the year that it was approved, which we don't normally or always do. So how you read that table is, let's just say in FY29, your tax bill was $1,000. In FY20, we added $337 to your tax bill. So your new tax bill is 1,000 plus 337. And then we add 294 the next year, so it's 1631. We had 318 the next year, it's 1951, and you get to about 3,200 by FY27. So that's going from 1,000 to 3,200, so triple in that 8-year period, if we borrowed the money in the year that we approved it. And then just one other little thing for people that don't have benefit from the residential exemption. I just did a quick estimate. The approximate tax impact of what we approved at the town meeting, at the last town meeting, on a home assessed at 3.2 million, a median number perhaps, without the residential exemption was $1,378 of increased taxes. Now I'm going to move to the 10-year SIP. If you could advance the page, please. So this is what the 10-year SIP in the general fund looks like right now. So $1.188 billion. You can see about half of that is from the coastal resilience plan, big chunk for public works, both that includes, of course, the new DPW and some facilities money. And of course, it's just a large operation. And then you can see the rest down along there. So just if you, this is where the kind of the work begins for us for the workshop. Erica, if you could advance the page. This is the same idea here. This is just a different visual for the 10-year SIP. You can see the donut there. It kind of gives you a better or a visual representation. You see that CRP is about 50% of the plan. An interesting fact of the 10-year SIP is that $884 million or 74% of the plan is in the first 5 years. Now, that's probably pretty intuitive because it's a lot easier to forecast in the first in a 5-year period versus a 10-year period, and people tend to jam the stuff in that they know is coming. But nevertheless, if the 5-year plan rolls in and we replicate the 5-year plan, it's no longer a $1.2 billion. It's more like $1.8 billion plan. So if you could advance the slide, please, Erica. So here's I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these pages, but this is what you have in front of you and represents the homework that I'm hoping you guys are going to do between now and the meeting in August 13th. So we have this sort of a plan for each department, and including some things like coastal resilience, which is not really a department. But so on the coastal resilience plan, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, $580 million, as Bobby mentioned earlier. Their big plans are the downtown neighborhood flood barrier, $105 million in 29, $120 million in 30 for the Steamboat Wharf resilience, and then $200 million out in 33 for the Washington Street corridor resilience improvements. Those 3 projects are about 75% of their total current ask. Next slide, please. The school, this plan is still a little bit work in progress. We should have better numbers by the time we get to the workshop. Obviously, the new school, which is not necessarily where you see it there in 32, it's not necessarily there in 32. That's where they've placed it today, but I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what and when they're going to need to build something. Next slide, please, Erica. Town admin, in the first top half of this, town admin carries a couple of things that wouldn't necessarily be intuitive to being in town admin. The central municipal facility in FY31 is in there for $56 million, and the new senior center is $50 million between 28 and 29. Housing. So we took you through the housing plan several months ago. And the Waite Drive housing and the Tacoma housing were recommended in there and endorsed by the select board. And those, you can see those two in there for 10 and $21 million respectively. There's also $30 million in the plan in FY30, which is a borrowing authorization. So that's a little bit of a double count. We'll probably take that out for the purposes of really thinking about capital, because it's funded by the $6.5 million appropriation that they get every year. So I don't want to double count that money. On the next slide, Erica, IT is basically recurring expenses for things like software licenses, computer replacements, and digital imaging updates. So that's exactly what I was talking about earlier, Bobby. That's what we needed to think about. That said, putting things in the budget with the Proposition 2.5 just makes the budget all that tougher to build each year. So so it's a little bit of a balancing act, and I think that's something that certainly the town manager has been considering, and we'll do some more analysis on that. You can go to the next slide, please. NRD. The top line is what you were referring to earlier, Bobby. A couple years ago, the select board asked Natural Resources to put in $1 million a year in their budget for coastal resilience for items unknown. There's also in FY29 the Sacagawea Pond shoreline construction and several other projects, but I just wanted to kind of flag the big ones. Next slide, please. Oh, please, thank you. There's not a lot in the police 10-year SIP at this point in time. The one, the town-wide radio system infrastructure replacement, I think is a pretty large undertaking, and Deputy Gibson, who usually creates these plans, confirmed that that's probably all that they're going to have in the plan for this year. Marine, you see a couple boat replacements. We've done a lot of good work, I think, the departments in the last few years about having better replacement schedules for their vehicles. Fire, on the next slide, Erica, is largely vehicle replacements. Fire's always been pretty good about having a good forward view of that, but there's also $13 million in there in FY28 and 29 for a new fire station in Sconset, maybe one worth discussing. And then the next page, so central fleet. So when you go through these pages, you can decide for yourself if you want to rate as high, medium, or low central fleet. Some maybe take the big ticket items, maybe leave, like the very first one, there's a replacement vehicle for a town admin. I'm not sure that that's worth prioritizing. It's in a replacement schedule that central fleet maintains. This is actually 2 pages you need to look at, Eric, if you can just go to the bottom of the next page. So the entire central fleet budget for the 10-year period is $7.7 million. And then there's the next slide, please, Erica. DPW has a couple of big ones we're talking about. The third line down, townwide municipal facilities, and you see the forecast for the amounts of money we need to maintain municipal facilities, starting with the $10.8 million and working out the horizon. And there's also the $60 million for the new DPW facility there in FY29.
Rick, why does the bottom number in FY27 say 84 million?
Because there's a typo in there.
Okay, just making sure that I wasn't missing something.
If you could go to the next slide so we can go away from that typo. Parks and Rec. So there's an RFP going out for the Parks and Rec master plan. So I expect that this may change post that plan. So this one will be probably a little difficult for us to prioritize in 3 weeks' time. And then the next page, transportation. I only point that, I mean, this is part of the plan, but this is an example of some good work that the departments are doing, in this case DPW, and kind of just working to include both their own projects as well as the tip. But I thought it was a useful indication about how much work there actually is on the horizon. Okay, next slide, please. And so those 12 slides are what you have on your table, and you can hopefully take those home with you. So I'm just going to try one more of these tax impact slides. So this table represents what we just looked at, the tax bill impact of what we just looked at. So I'm going to read it again because I want to make sure I say it exactly properly. The approximate tax impact of the FY 28 through 32, so the first 5 years of capital projects on the average year-round house with the residential exemption. It's based on current tax rate, current property values, and current residential exemptions, because we don't know what those are in the future. So we're just going off what we have today. So again, if you started with a $1,000 bill, it's going to go up by $281 in FY 20 as a result of FY 28 capital plan, another $382 in FY 29 then you're up to 1662. And by the end of it, you're going from, it's about a 50% increase. That's not right. Anyway, it goes, we're adding $1,550 to the $1,000 bill over the course of the 5 years. So you're going from $1,000 to $2,550.
Except you already took the 1,000 bill to 3,000 in the first presentation.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So you're
I'm already,
3,000, you're
yeah.
just adding.
I'm not,
Thank you.
I'm not trying to do that.
My mouth.
I can
I
give
think
you
my math is still right.
yeah, no, so the hypothetical $1,000 becomes $2,550. So if I can go to the next slide, there are some items that we also just need some more guidance on. Things like the Intermodal Transportation Center was in the capital plan when I got here 6 or 7 years ago. We haven't talked about it for a long time. We actually took it out of this plan. It's no longer represented. We need to discuss that. There's some other things there. You can see a list of indoor rec center, possibly the auxiliary storage building, and Maya Comet pond dredging, which is a good example of how difficult these SIPs are. I think we had appropriation of a little over $4 million for it, and the bids came in at 3 times that amount. And so then the next page, which this may be the most important slide of the deck, in preparation for the workshop, we're asking you to do the following. Each one of those pages that you have has a little blue star on it. We need you to rate each project as high, medium, and low. And that may be really difficult because you might not know what the projects exactly are. Some people, some obviously, Jill, you've got a lot more experience, and Brooke maybe too, and Dawn, you've been on Capcom more recently, but reach out to me if you need a little bit of an explanation, and I can give it to you at a high level. And if you need more answers, we'll get you the answers from the actual departments. I guess I would just say, save high for high, just so we don't end up with, a lot of, just make sure what you rate is high. Because I think when we go through this and we actually try to come down to what our really important projects are, we want high to mean high, not medium because you kind of like it or for some other reason. And also, if you could each pick 3 to 5 projects you want to talk about at the meeting, I'll send you this all in an email, so you'll have it. No. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah.
But that's the reality of
Yeah.
it, Rick.
Okay.
This is not gonna, I believe this is not gonna happen in one meeting.
It's not. There's no chance it's going to happen in one meeting. In fact, and this only includes the general fund stuff tonight. So it's not going to happen in one meeting. Libby and I have been talking about that. I actually said to her, this could take several months for us to get to the bottom of if we're really committed to the process. You can either mark your papers high, medium, and low, or I can send you this in Excel if you want to do it electronically. And then I need it back by like August the 3rd, because we're going to then take all the information and collate it so we can bring it to you sort of like, okay, everybody thought this was high, everybody thought this was low, and everybody wanted to talk about the intermodal transportation center. Highly unlikely, but nevertheless, so that we can prepare for the meeting. So that's all I really have for tonight.
One question?
Yeah.
These are assuming no grants, no grants, no transportation funding from the state or anything. This is just the total number.
Correct.
Okay.
It also assumes there's no inflation.
I know.
It's
Jill?
Can I, Rick, thanks for doing this. It's very helpful. I love seeing everything divided up by department and all the out years. Thank you for doing that. Can I make a suggestion that we actually, it's going to create more work, I'm sorry, but I personally think that we as a board should be meeting with the department heads and going over each department. The enterprise funds, I think we could probably do that collectively, but I think it would help everyone to understand if that really is a priority for them, because is it a priority for the department? I can't, one of the hardest things about being on the capital committee is that everything we look at is in isolation. And so it just kind of appears and we have to look at it and then they tell you, oh yeah, we really want this. This is great. And then they rank it high, medium, low, and there's some debate about that. And, you know, I just feel like we as a board, I would feel better if we would look at each department together and discuss it, because I think, again, it's a more holistic approach. You know, for example, just now on the slide with coastal resiliency, you know, we looked at doing the groundwater mapping tonight, and up there, there's 2 more years of more groundwater mapping. And of course, to be honest, in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking, why isn't that going through the water department? Those are where our hydrologists are. So I think that's why I need a little more in-depth information per department. That's just an example.
So we do intend to have any department that has a project in the plan will be at the offsite. Are you suggesting you'd like to meet with them ahead of time?
I'm suggesting that I would rather hear from them before I rank these.
Okay.
If that's what you're asking us to do. I mean, I can put down high, medium, low if you want me to, but I think it's helpful to do that. I mean, again, the coastal resiliency is obviously the hardest one. I think that has the most history, and those are the biggest numbers that we're looking at in the near future. The other one is, though, the school, because I'm sure the school is going to have more capital items than what's on that list.
Yeah. I said that one's still a work in progress. They have not yet. I was talking to the school today. They have not yet completed, but
and they have
but I don't-
equipment requests every year that.
Right.
Yeah.
But they have a potentially a several $1 million ask for additional money for the administration building. But beyond that, it's sort of that routine stuff of roof repairs but they just haven't populated the plan.
But like in here, we don't know when the design money is going to be asked for to get going on the school, which I think if
We
they.
don't, correct.
Right.
don't-
Is it designing starting in 32 or is it designing going to start in 29?
They don't
I
know
don't
yet.
know. Yeah. So it's things like that. That's why I think it would be helpful for everyone to understand that. And then I feel like we could give a better indication maybe in the meeting as well.
So you want to go through a Capcom-like process with the select, I just want to make sure I got
Maybe
clear.
expedited. I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels. It's just.
Erica?
Oh, I didn't have any kind of response to that. I just wanted to note that the meeting is in this room on the 13th,
Not in the trailer.
Even better.
not in the trailer.
I love the trailer.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things I wanted to add to the list.
The trailer? You want another one?
I know I want landscaping. It's the biggest
Okay,
eyesore on the
So
island.
that's on your list of 3 to 5 things to bring into the meeting.
Just throw it in there. Let's shingle the thing while we're at it.
Oh, Bobby.
Rick, I can't rate something that I don't know what it is.
Right.
I mean, we got $105 million in here for a downtown neighborhood flood barrier. What is that?
Right.
We have $120 million for steamship wharf resilience. What? I mean, this whole page, as far as I'm concerned, is low until I know what it is. It's the same thing with the rest of it. It's not quite as difficult because I can look at, I mean, it just, we got $6 million of coastal resiliency, dredge plan. I mean, at least I understand what that is. The Marine Department, we have $2 million supplemental funding for the Harbor Master Building. Didn't we just approve all that?
That's in 27. So
It's 27.
Bobby,
So
That's
the 27 line is already done.
yeah, I just put it in there. So you
Okay,
have a little
okay,
perspective.
that's good. That helps me because I thought
Yeah.
we were approving. But still, it's going to be really difficult. I mean, I'm just going to pick 1 or 2 things from each page that I think is high, and we'll talk about those, I guess, on the 13th. But, the other thing that I would like to see is when we break down what it's going to do to our tax bill every year, I'd like to see two lines, one with the residential exemption and one with just the person who doesn't get any breaks, because all these rentals that people are going to be staying in aren't getting any breaks. And all these landlords are just going to pass this cost on to those rentals. So unless you're in a subsidized rental unit, you're going to get whacked every time we raise these kind of numbers.
Libby?
Thank you. I was just going to say that we sort of expected that this might happen. And as long as, and I think that as you're all discussing this, it seems as though it might be better to have this more in-depth discussion with the department heads present so you can ask them questions. And then you do your prioritization after that. That might necessitate that might necessitate an additional meeting beyond what we've already been kind of high level conceptually talking about. But as long as you all are comfortable with that, and that the capital program committee might not get the projects for them to review till a little later in the process, I think that can be pretty well accommodated.
Yeah.
So at your meeting on the 13th, perhaps, I mean, definitely start thinking about prioritizing and thinking about the questions you want to ask the department heads. But at the 13th meeting, perhaps that is more of a overview of the actual projects rather than specific prioritizing.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how we get at this, but I don't think any of these big numbers are real. I don't think we can build anything for $50 million. That's one of these huge facilities. And the kind of numbers we're seeing coming from off island for building schools or from the vineyard are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, granted, we're not talking about a high school, but we don't know exactly what the school is talking about. They've got to get a little bit more of a handle on that. And the difficult thing is we may have things that we would very much like to prioritize, but a school is always going to leapfrog over everything if we don't have a place for our kids. So
Could I just
Yeah.
add to that? I think that's absolutely accurate. If I take something like the new senior center, we have it in for $55 million. We don't actually know if it's going to be $55 million. This is rolled in on the SIP over the years and it was in the SIP at the direction of previous select board. And it just rolls in and it's sort of a little bit unattended. And so I think the prioritization of that is not whether it's $56 million or it's $75 million or $45 million. It's how important is a new senior center? That's just the way I would think about it.
Jill?
I also
Oh,
just,
sorry.
I think in that conversation, just to, if this is helpful to everybody, that when we meet in August, that I think we should look at some of the borrowing they already have that they haven't used. I really like to see that. So if the department heads can come and be willing to talk about the projects that have been approved, they haven't moved forward, or if they plan to, or maybe there's some that they're not going to do. But I think some of those, that is also helpful because sometimes those kind of tie into things in the future or they get repetitive. I'm less concerned about like sidewalks and roads. I really am not talking about that. But I think because of coastal resilience in particular, they have spent a lot of money on studies that are leading into these projects, and we want to make sure that we understand that they have what they need, kind of guiding them as well. So it would help for them to tell us kind of, here's what we have done, and here's where we are, and this is why we are here now.
Brooke?
I think that there's two conversations, right? What are our priorities as a board and as a community in terms of big ticket initiatives, right? And I think of this as absolute must-haves. Like if the school population grows and we need a school for the kid, that's an absolute must-have, right? Nice to have, you know, and maybe we're going to have to say not necessary, you know, given the scale of everything, right? I mean, I think this is sort of turned into a wish list, and now we got to turn it into a reality list.
Jill?
And one more
I think
comment
Amy's
is that
putting
it's hard to talk about these things in light, like we have to look at it in terms of our borrowing capacity. I know it's very large because our values are very high. Our assessments are very high, but I think it would be really helpful if we get some guidance on our debt and on our borrowing
Yep.
and on how that can guide us. Because, you know, most people do live in a budget and we need to too. And that would be the first guiding principle that we could rely on.
Right.
That I think could guide us.
And I think you can go at it, you can start at either end here. You can start with borrowing capacity. And try and back into how many things you can do, or you can figure out what the priorities are and then figure out how expensive it is and then try and sequence them financially. And that's kind of the path that I've been trying, that I went through. Maybe it's just because it's a little more intuitive for me. That doesn't mean it's right. I'm just saying, I would like to to hear the priorities of the town first and then figure out how we can afford that, if we can afford it.
Oh, can I go to Amy because she's been standing up there for a while?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I don't have that screen up.
Do you want to do Mary first?
No, go. Oh, sorry.
Amy Eldridge, I just wanted to say thank you. That's very enlightening and informative. It's a lot. And we're getting to the point now where we really have to look at wants versus need. And I think it would be, you guys have a great social media person who's getting things out there onto the interweb for everybody to see. I think it would be great to get a lot of these things out in front of the public. I know you're talking 7 or 8 years down the road, but people need to realize what's coming at them instead of 30 days before town meeting when the warrant shows up in your mailbox and you're like, what is this? And then people who can see what's coming down the pike. I mean, we were talking about schools in 28, now it's being pushed back to 32. I mean, but it's on the radar. It's going to happen in the next 10 years. And $1 billion in 10 years is a lot of money. I know it's a lot of necessity, but we also need to look at wants versus needs. But I think if you could get some of these huge projects out in front of the people who don't typically come to select board every Wednesday night or to planning board or to town meeting, so they can actually see what's happening in a timeline going 8 or 10 years out, like this is happening in this year, I think you might actually get more engagement from those that don't come. But I think it's really important for them to see what they're going to be asked to pay for in advance of 2 weeks before town meeting. Thank you.
Mary Longacre?
Well, Amy said a lot of what I was going to say. But my real question is, when does the public have a chance to weigh in on what they think the priorities should be? I mean, will the workshop accept public comment, or will it be just the select board? Is the Capcom looking at just one project at a time? As Jill was saying, we don't really have an opportunity there to say, look at the big picture. So when is the public invited to comment on this? And as Amy said, it can't be at town meeting floor.
I think we can weave in some bit of public comment for the workshop. We'll probably have to have some time allotment.
I'm thinking that
3 minutes and maybe a certain.
You may be well informed by the public to say yes or no to something, to save you a whole lot of research work and groundwork, and consider alternatives.
And anyone is always welcome to reach out to us. All of our emails are posted on the town's website. Ray?
Yeah, Raymond Acosta. I just have a question regarding this. Was everything we saw on the slides in terms of all the departments, was it all like projects that will be voted on at town meeting that we'll have to get through? Or is there a good majority that is actually in the yearly budget?
Well, the yearly budget has to get voted too.
Yeah,
But-
the yearly budget has to get voted, but what portion of that was individuals, like, for instance, the island home, so on and so forth?
So Well, none of what you saw today would be in an operating budget, of the town, and it would all be voted on either in Article 10, which is usually the capital article at the town meeting, or if it's a debt exclusion it would have to be
Yeah, what were the
approved at the
major-
town meeting
out of the
and at the
1.2
ballot.
billion, let's call it, what is the majority? Like how much of the 1.2 billion is overrides in that?
The majority.
Yeah, the
Does
majority.
anyone know?
Yeah.
Jill, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna, it's all new money in there. That's all money that we don't have yet. There are things that they put through that free cash pays for. That's been happening in Article 10. The enterprise funds tend to pay for themselves, but Article 10 is kind of where you see, sometimes they're able to pay for things through free cash. And that's another part of this process that's a little murky because sometimes they can't figure that out until closer to when the budget cycle ends. And so sometimes when we at Capital review these projects, I really factor in, is it new money? Are we going to pay through this through our operating budget? But that's not actually something I get to know. It's something I have to guess. And so that's something that I don't love about the process, but that really isn't on town administration. It's really just the timeline. So you can't always know, but you could take a guess. But the debt exclusions are put on the warrant by the select board. That's who does that. So that's why what we prioritize is going to be very important. Those things don't just bubble up from other committees.
Yeah.
That's what's determined here. And that's why you saw this year, like with the sewer, they made a later decision to put that in the warrant. Because again, the timeline issue and some information that came to them. But that's why that actually wasn't reviewed by the capital committee. Because we were told not to review it and then it got put in later. So, and some of that again is timeline, that this isn't a criticism, but it can be confusing. And I'm hoping that through this process, it will be less confusing for the public.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bob?
For me, one of the things is, we approved $200 million this year, but if you look at what we did, the room was stacked from day one. I mean, there were 1,100 people there. We voted on the Island Home, 400 people got up and left. We voted on the school, 300 more people got up and left. Then we voted on the sewer and 250 more people got up and left. And we were down to 400 people at the end of the night. Now, those were pet projects for all these people. And I don't really see that many pet projects in here. And no respect to Mary, but if we have a work group here and 10 people show up because they have a pet project, that isn't necessarily a cross section of the island. And I don't see many things on here that are going to go just flying through town meeting like those last three projects did this year, especially when they start hearing how much their taxes are going to go up from those three projects when they're all actually on the debt, when they're on the tax bill. So I think it's really important that we look at this list very closely and we pick the priorities. And, it may be that one department has 4 priorities and one department has no priorities, but we need to really dig into this because it is a lot of money and it could be a lot more money when it's all said and done. Putting something in there right now, 5 years out and saying it's $50 million, it can be $70 million 5 years from now. And that's the reality of it. So.
Brooke?
Yeah, and we don't get to say to the voters at town meeting, hey, we're putting 5 things on, but these are the 3 you really need. They all, they're evaluating them all as a whole, and so I guess, that's why we're elected. Honestly, is to do this, and no disrespect to Amy or Mary, but we have had meeting after meeting, collision. This has been agendaed for this board the 4 years I've been on it. And I'll be honest with you, my experience is that 99.9% of the community only pays attention the week before town meeting and the vote. We pump out tons of information, and people still are not getting it or are not focused. I mean, it's just, we're in a very difficult media environment. It's very hard to get people's attention beyond a 30-second reel on Instagram. And you can only put out so many of those in a week before you lose everybody anyway. I can't tell you how many people I've said, do you follow the town on social media? Nope. Do you get the town manager's newsletter? Nope. I mean, we are pumping information out by the hour. And you can lead a horse to water, folks, but you can't make them drink. And I appreciate the people who come. I appreciate the people who ask questions. I appreciate the people who listen, but it's tough. But that's why we're elected. It's the job we have.
1.1 billion will get their attention.
But at the moment, we have 5 people online and who's in the room. Like that. I mean, granted, it's almost 9 o'clock, but Jill?
Can I suggest that we not call this the sip anymore? Maybe we should call it a gulp. Maybe we should call it a gulp, not a sip.
Oh, clever.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Thank
so
you, Dawn.
August 13th, tune in. Next up, we have a review of the 2027 annual town meeting and election. So that will be an important date. Libby, did you wanna? Oh, are you muted? I can't hear you. You don't look muted, but we can't hear you. I mean, I believe in the conversations that we've had so far that May 8th probably made the most sense. Am I right in that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like we need a complicated conversation around this. We have traditionally alternated between the weeknight model and the weekend and the Saturday model because either one naturally is more accessible or less accessible to different members of the community. And because we had weeknights this year, I would assume we'd go to the Saturday, and the available Saturday we have is the 8th based on the availability of the clicker people and the school and the tech people and all of it. So
and then it would jump to the 10th at night if we needed to continue it.
Right.
And then a big question is on the election. Is everyone comfortable with it being on June 1st?
No. No, we,
Flip it back.
Sorry,
no,
there you are.
can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Debbie?
Okay, now I can't, I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know what is going on over here, but, we've abandoned the June idea.
Okay.
And I was talking to town clerk's office today, and we were thinking, so I mistakenly thought that Memorial Day was May 24th, but it's actually May 31st. So we were thinking that the election could actually be on May 25th.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If that's what you all are agreeable on, that gives the 2-week time period to accommodate the non-binding request, to have a 2-week period between the town meeting and the election. Again, that is non-binding, so if you want to do it earlier, you could, but May 25th seems to work
For the election?
for the election.
So May 8th and May 25th, I think, unless someone has a really strong desire for it to be on Monday, May 10th, town meeting.
I like the Monday, Tuesday better than a Saturday, all day Saturday. I think there's a lot of, that time of year, there's a lot of people who are going off with sports with their, you're gonna have problems no matter when you do it, but yeah, I'm a couple night person more than a sit there all day Saturday.
I'm with Matt on that one. I also would like to see us go to a two-town meeting structure where we just do finance in the spring and we do zoning in the fall, and then we could maybe get through it in one night, but that's just me. So.
I'm flexible. I liked the Monday. I agree, though, that the turnout really might have been driven by the debt exclusions, but, you know, we had almost 1,500 people there. So did that help because it was a Monday, Tuesday? I did see a lot of, I think, people that I normally didn't see. But I can't say that that's because it's a Monday or Tuesday. But I preferred it, but I'm really not going to.
It's issue
Something we
related.
don't wanna
It's
do.
issue related. I mean, we had a busy Saturday when we had, you know, what was it? Yeah, short-term rentals on there, and people all were voting their pocketbooks. But if it was a, you know, anyway.
I love a Saturday if we get done in one day. When we go from a Saturday and then we have to skip over to Monday night, I don't love that. And it depends on how everything goes.
It's, you know,
Go ahead.
back when we used to have it in April, I was not upset with a Saturday. But when you get into May, everyone's trying to get their businesses open and ready. And Saturdays, like Matt said, kids are playing sports. It just, it's so hard to take a whole day off on a Saturday in May, where you can go on a Monday night and, you know, the majority of people are going to come on the first night. And if we have a second night, we're lucky we have 250 people there. We'll all be there because we'll have to be. But, you know, that's why I really would like to go to, you know, 2 a year, because
Somebody's alarm's going.
we could get through all the financials, I think, in one night on a Monday. It's the zoning stuff that takes the second night, or it takes a lot of time but you know, that's just me again. So
I mean, I'm fine with doing it at night. Well, I will say that we did have some concerns about us starting at 4 o'clock this year. So do we want to go back to it being at 5 o'clock?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So just
So I'll make a motion that we have to hold town meeting on Monday, May 9th, with the second day, if necessary, on May 10th, with town election on May 25th, but starting town meeting at 5 p.m.
second,
wait, double check the date because one says May 10th and one says May 9th. I just want to double.
May
check.
10th is a Monday, May 11th is a Tuesday.
So it's May 10th is
Yeah,
the,
10,
is the
11.
correct date.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to May 10th, carrying to the 11th if we need it.
And with
And the
town
election.
election on the 25th?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That carries
Aye.
unanimously 5-0. Sorry, last up, committee reports before counting.
I don't have any committee reports, but I would request that we maybe move the licensing and executive sessions to 5 p.m. because I couldn't get through the other day because there was no cell service. So it's just getting harder and harder to do them in the middle of the day.
Is that going to be an issue in the off season though? Or is it just really the next couple?
It's still an issue because I have to work, and, you know, at 11 o'clock in the middle of the day, it's not easy just to stop doing what we're doing. And, you know, I got to try to find a quiet place. And if it's an executive session meeting, I got to get somewhere where no one else can hear what's being said. Even though I look like I'm just talking to myself in the corner,
Let us
still-
talk about scheduling at our
Okay.
next agenda meeting.
All
I'll
right.
get back to you.
thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn select
moved.
board? Is there a second?
Seconds.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously, and I will turn it over to Jill Beef.
Okay, you guys gotta bear with me because I haven't chaired one of these before, so.
Just make sure you're talking to your mic, please.
Yeah. I'm going to call this meeting of the Nantucket County Commissioners to order on this Wednesday evening. It's 9:03 p.m. Wow. Please note this meeting is being audio video recorded. And I think I can go ahead and open it for public comment at this point.
For items not on the agenda.
For items not on the agenda. And I'm going to close public comment. I don't know of any new business. And can I get an approval of the minutes and the warrants?
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. We're now going to open a public hearing. We're going to ask for a motion to open a public hearing.
You can just open it.
We can just open the public hearing. And I think with that, we're going to turn it over to Tracy, who's going to lead us through.
Can you just note that it's a public hearing for the taking?
For the
of-
takings for the
Tom
Tom
Nevers
Nevers
Road.
multi-use path.
Thank you.
Tracy, take it away.
Beef. Tracy McDonald, Real Estate Manager. So the Tom Nevers multi-use path has been in the planning stages for years. Conceptual plans were presented to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Committee and the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. And the project received the construction funding and approval by majority vote at the May 2025 annual town meeting and also at the general election ballot. On June 4th, 2025, choices for the layout were presented to the select board and option 3 and option B were chosen. And following that decision, design and easement plans were developed using our best efforts to keep the path in as much as the existing Tom Nevers County layout as possible, which is 60 feet. The result is the final and permanent and temporary easement shown on the plans that's entitled multi-use plan easement, multi-use path easement plan for the Tom Nevers Road, Nantucket, Mass. 02554, dated July 2nd, 2026, which is filed with the town clerk. Last week on Wednesday, we had an abutter forum and got pretty good attendance and had some feedback, which was really helpful, I think, to staff in going forward with this project. Primarily, screening was identified as an ask for the between the path and the setbacks. Essentially, most of the easements are within the setback, and some other questions were raised, and we answered them, and I think it went really well. So, with that said, I would request of the county commissioners an approval and execution of the order of taking by eminent domain for the permanent and temporary easements set forth on that July 2nd, 2026 plan, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 79, as amended and according to the town charter, and approval of the awards of damages to the affected abutters as set forth in Schedule A, which is attached to the order of taking. I have attorney Vicky Marsh online for procedural questions or any other questions you may have, as well as Transportation Program Manager Mike Burns. And I believe hopefully Drew has hung in and if you have questions for him.
So I think that we're going to go ahead. Should we go ahead and have public comment for this now?
You can.
Stephen Kaler has his hand raised.
Okay.
Online.
Stephen, do you want to go ahead and?
Yes, good evening. I'm Stephen Keller from 3 Sandpiper Way, and I submitted several questions earlier today to the public comment email address. And I'm pleased for the opportunity in the next 3 minutes to raise these questions. Number one, is the select board aware that bike lane transportation research clearly indicates that two-way bike paths are far riskier than one-way at intersections such as streets and driveways? This is because approaching motorists are required to look in both directions and often don't. Number two, is the select board aware that this concern is in addition to the risks of head-on collisions or sideswipes between bicyclists traveling head-on in close quarters? Number three, is the select board aware that bike lane transportation research shows that two-way bike paths are only advisable for long stretches without intersections, such as bridges or roads that have minimal vehicular entrances and exits, such as Milestone Road? Number four, is the select board aware that transportation research indicates that one-way paths are safest overall, and this is especially true with the rising use of e-bikes and motorized scooters? Number 5, is the select board aware that there are 33% more homes in Tom Nevers East than in Tom Nevers West, and that there is much more incoming and exiting traffic on the east side, even without accounting for cut-through volume? Number 6, is the select board aware that all utility poles and guy wires are located on the east side of Tom Nevers Road and that the west side of the road has none? Number 7, is the select board aware that the 4 main roads in Tom Nevers East, Longwood, Lyons, Parsons, and Old Tom Nevers, are all paved roads, and that vehicles, cars, landscaping trucks, and delivery trucks operate at higher speed when turning to enter and exit these streets? Number 8, is the select board aware that all roads in the 0.7-mile stretch on the west side of Tom Nevers Road between Norwood Street and Driscoll Street are dead-end dirt roads, and that vehicles travel more slowly on them when entering and exiting? May we also ask respectfully whether any select board members have ridden bikes from Milestone Road on the west side of Tom Nevers Road to the beach? Number 10, is the select board aware that neither the town nor Weston and Sampson Engineering has performed a traffic analysis on both sides of Tom Nevers Road during the population period? Number 11, is the select board aware that a two-way bike path exclusively on the east side imposes a disproportionate burden and safety risk on Tom Nevers East residents and drivers and is a recipe for disastrous accidents as occurred in July on a two-way bike path on Martha's Vineyard? Finally, is the select board willing to meet with concerned Tom Nevers East homeowners for dialogue and to attain consensus in the optimal position of the future Tom Nevers bike path? I and others would welcome responses to these questions from the select board at the members' convenience. It's been a long night. We don't expect all these answers today. The written questions have been submitted to the public comment email address. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaler. I think that we'll probably have some people that can respond to some of your questions at another time, but as you suggested, tonight is probably not going to happen. Do we have anybody else here for public comment? Can you just identify yourself, and a reminder that we do have a 3-minute rule, even though we try to offer some latitude during a public hearing.
Thank you. My name is Gregory O'Shea. I am in a butter on, we live at the corner of Tom Nevers Road and Longwood Drive. We are seasonal residents since 2011 in Nantucket, as well as part of our family are year-round residents and small business owners on the island. We know a lot of work and planning has gone into the development of the proposed path. We are in support of a multi-use path in Tom Nevers, but we have a few major concerns that have not been fully addressed for residents impacted by the path being constructed next to or on part of our property. One is the temporary easement and the screening, which Tracy mentioned. This area is part of our buffer between the road and our property, as well as for other abutters, some that I think were not able to come because of the timing of the meeting. Replacing trees and vegetation with just loam, which is the current plan, is concerning to us, as it will take years for this to grow back to what it currently is. Speaking of trees, part of the character of Tom Nevers is the trees, and that's part of the attraction of that area and the natural environment. Many of the trees will be removed for this project, for the building of the construction of the path. Our understanding is that a tree plan has been made or is in development of being made to be submitted to the state of Massachusetts. We feel that this should be more publicly communicated and shared with the residents of Tom Nevers. Many of our neighbors thought that certain trees along the proposed path were going to be saved, but actually they're not going to be saved. So there's really a lack of communication with the residents as well as the public on the trees, and trees and natural environment is one of the things that's very attractive to Nantucket. We also heard earlier about road safety. We're concerned with more bikes, more activity on the road. Through this whole process, there really hasn't been a lot of discussion about speed limit, speed notification and alert signs, more police monitoring, rules. And, you know, there was a reference earlier to e-bikes. There's a lot of concerns about activity and traffic. We're really like kind of flabbergasted at the speeds that people go on Tom Nevers Road because it is such a long straightaway with no stop signs or stop lights. So we think that road safety needs to be incorporated into this plan, and we haven't seen that to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Is there anybody else here? And do we have anyone online? Excuse me. Hi, can you just tell us your name and address, please?
My name is Ed Kerrigan. We live at 1 Sandpiper Way. We are about the bike path, and I spoke at our meeting last week, and Tracy made this point tonight. I understand there's a procedure to go through to provide fencing and screening and all that, and I understand that it's part of the character of our town. But in our case, where it's unclear how much our property is going to be impacted. It's probably not as much as others, but what I'm advocating for is some mechanism that if there is screening taken away, vegetation taken away, that there's some mechanism for us to provide some kind of temporary screening or whatever that might be while things grow back up. It can be limited to a year or 2 years, but some way to protect the privacy of our backyard. I'm just advocating for that for myself and for my fellow property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerrigan. Brooke?
Yeah, I attended the information session and this question was asked, and I just want to reiterate that the HDC has control over any kind of fencing on Nantucket. The town has no ability to dictate to the HDC. So property owners who are interested in putting up temporary screening will have to go to the HDC on their own and apply to do so. We can't make that happen through that process. It exists separate and distinct from our work. So I just want to reiterate that I'm not sure that was articulated as clearly as it could have been the other night. So.
Thank you, Brooke.
You've got one hand online.
This is Malgorza Mrozek? Mrozek? Name?
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yep,
can.
go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Malgorzata Mrozek on behalf of the Bermans at 98 Tom Nevers Road. My clients would just like to echo many of the comments that have been made. They are in support of a multi-use path in general, but there is a viable option with option B of the bike lanes, which would not require the temporary or permanent easements that are at issue tonight, and would also not require as much damage to trees, to vegetation in the neighborhood. And so with a viable second option, we would request that the town reconsider their selection, not go forward with the easements tonight, and instead select the bike paths for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Do I have to close the vote? Oh. This is the public hearing. Does anyone else wish to speak? Amy, come on down.
I'd like to ask, sorry, Amy Eldridge, I'd like to ask that if people have to go to the HDC for approval, that maybe in the taking process, that the application fees at least be waived and they can just go do it, make it a little simpler for them.
Thanks.
I don't know if Mike or Drew want to speak to any of the comments. No? Okay.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Just for a little background on the bike lane kind of keeps coming up. We had a really extensive board discussion prior to us reconstituting as this board. And this is the option that we already voted on. Just so
I also want to note that this did go to the tree committee, and I think was pretty extensively discussed there as well.
Excellent. Any more discussion on this?
With note that I appreciate that some people feel the impact is great on their property. We've reviewed this extensively, and I would make a motion to, let's see, what's the
taking?
motions?
Would you like me to read it again, Brooke?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
That the county commissioners' approval and execution of an order of taking by eminent domain for the permanent and temporary easements set forth on the July 2nd, 2026 plan pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 79, as amended, and according to the town charter, and approval of the awards of damages to the affected abutters as set forth on Schedule A attached to the order of taking.
So moved.
There a second?
second.
Any discussion on the motion? Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you. All right.
Next up, we have to address the petition for Egan Lane, I think.
No, I'm like the closer. I think that's been my title, actually, my entire career.
Not a public hearing. Can we jump to approving it?
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's fine with me.
So,
Actually, Tracy, I think everyone's prepared to approve this with.
okay, I just want to
doing
make
a
sure we
presentation. Thank you.
do it the rest.
Can I get a
Sure, I'm
motion?
Bring the motion correctly.
Yeah.
That we're
Accepting
taking the,
petition.
we're taking the driveway to a public way for the Egan
Yeah,
Lane.
Tracy's gonna.
Okay.
So I did have it this simplified actually already in anticipation. So so you have to so following up with the request from the select board to the county commissioners, you're taking a vote to
Approve.
to remand a letter. Vicky, you might have to get me going on
Don't
this.
they have to accept the petition first?
So they have to accept the
No.
petition and then send a
yeah.
letter to the planning board.
Okay.
Totally.
To accept the vote should be as follows: to accept the petition from the select board to lay out Egan Lane, also known as Common Drive easement, as a public road, as shown on the plan entitled Layout Plan of Egan Lane, also known as Common Driveway Easements in Nantucket, Mass, dated July 15th, 2026. And to refer the petition to the planning board pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Sections 1G through 81 I.
Thank you. Can I get a,
So moved, but can I add that, just to memorialize that the HOA will be responsible for all of the road maintenance?
can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If I may add, Madam Chair,
Yes, of course, Vicky. Thank you.
if I can add, Madam Chair, that the MOU that's going to be prepared. Okay. I can't, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can't hear you.
If I may add that the MOU that's being drafted between the owners and the town will actually contain that provision in it. So that will be there, including some other restrictions that will be placed on this.
That's great.
Thank you.
So much. Are there any commissioner comments or reports?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
You've got stuff to sign, so please don't leave.
Thank you.